Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has Sharingan and Senju bloodline. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by claytbug and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Just a little thing I probably should have added the first time I posted this chapter. I want to make note on how I plan to work with Kakashi bloodline limits. I plan to respect that bloodline limits are kept in the bloodlines of those who had it before. But I don't remember the anime ever going into detail about how a Kakashi comes around. I want to explain it using genetics, as in Kakashi are genetic mutations that are very rare and are a dominant gene. As we have seen from the anime, there are lots of different styles that Kakashi users created, such as magnet style. But we know of at least 3 users of magnet style: Gaara's father, the third Kazekage, and Toroi from Kumagakure. I doubt that Toroi and Gaara are related, so that's how I plan to explain it. Both had mutations that allowed them to possess 2 main chakra natures, and they fashioned their own styles that happen to coincide. Physical bloodlines are more strict in their transfer, as you would need to be a direct descendant to possess one like the Sharingan, while someone could be born with 2 chakra natures out of the blue. I don't want to spoil if Naruto is Senju or it came naturally, but that's my take on it. Naruto Uzumaki ran like his life depended on it. He knew he was still being chased, and if he was caught, well, he knew that he couldn't let himself get caught. The scroll he was lugging around was really slowing him down, since it weighed more than him. He was being chased by every ninja in the village because he was gullible. All he wanted was to become a ninja, and now that prospect looked as far off as the moon. The whole time here and all he could think about was what started all of this: a stupid test. 3 hours earlier, Naruto Uzumaki was reliving history once again, sitting under a tree watching as his classmates once again graduated Ninja Academy while he didn't. He remembered begging to be let in and to become a ninja, and he had failed for the 3rd time in a row. The Ninja Academy of Konoha was a school set up by the first Hokage to teach children how to become ninja. It enabled clan children to get an education that was scheduled rather than whenever their parents were home from missions, and it enabled the children of normal families to learn the profession of a shinobi. Entry was allowed for anyone once they reached the appropriate age, with some being allowed to enter as young as 4. Naruto, like many orphans, had been enrolled to give them a chance at a future with a career serving the leaf as a shinobi. And so at the age of 12, tears stung in his eyes as he watched his classmates proudly show off their new headbands to their parents, while he didn't have either. He quickly wiped them away and settled for the long walk home, feeling miserable. He couldn't believe it, years later, and he still couldn't learn the stupid clone jutsu. Every year it was on the exam just to spite him and stop him from continuing. He had been in the academy longer than any of his classmates, but that didn't matter, he couldn't pass the final test. It's not fair. He mumbled to himself as he walked through the streets, ignoring the glares sent his way. Nothing could make him feel worse than he already did. He didn't even want to stop at Iruka's. The last thing he wanted was to tell them he failed again. He just wanted to go to bed and figure it out tomorrow. He made it to his front door and sighed at the newest addition to the graffiti marring his home. It was a lot funnier when it wasn't happening to him. He fumbled for his keys and managed to drop them, like life couldn't be worse. Failed again, huh, Naruto? Naruto jumped and slammed his head on his door handle. Ow, ow, ow. He rubbed his head as he felt a bump already forming on his thick skull. He looked up and saw his teacher's assistant sitting on a wall. Yes sir, Mizuki sensei. He looked at the ground, embarrassed. How did you sneak up on me? That was awesome. His teacher looked at him with pity in his eyes. That's easy, Naruto, I'm a ninja. Hop up here, Naruto, let's talk. Naruto jumped up and sat next to his teacher. Naruto, I'm sorry that you didn't pass, but you have to know the clone jutsu, it's a basis for your ninja career. I couldn't pass you just to see you die or fail not knowing it. Naruto knew he was right, but it still hurt to know that until he could master it, he wasn't going to pass. That's what I have to say as a teacher, but as a friend I have something different to say. Mizuki stared at Naruto with a slight smile on his face. Are we friends, Naruto? Naruto nodded his head up and down, wondering and hoping what he was going to tell him. You didn't hear this from me, Naruto, but there is another way that you can pass the final exam at the academy. But what am I saying? You don't want to hear about that, do you? Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing, he could still be a ninja. What is it, Mizuki sensei? How can I pass? He was on the edge of his seat. Mizuki smiled and leaned in slightly. Naruto, all you have to deal is take a scroll from the Hokage's office. If you can manage to take it and learn a jutsu from it while not being caught, you automatically become a ninja. Naruto had been in the old man's office more times than he could count, and he could easily picture the scroll he was talking about. It was bigger than he was but was made of paper, so it shouldn't be too heavy. Is it the big one? Getting a nod in response, he could easily get it and get out, having learned the best escape routes years ago. He could already feel the headband on his head and he couldn't wait. Break. Naruto stopped by his hideout in the forest with a large scroll strapped to his back. He didn't think it was going to be that easy. He had left some adult magazines on the old man's desk and before he knew it the old man was heading to the bathroom. Must have had to use the bathroom. With the old man gone he grabbed the scroll which weighed a whole lot more than he thought and made his getaway. It was like no one was even ready for it because he made it out easy as pie. He had gotten past the hard part and now all he needed was to learn something before he was tracked down. Lugging the scroll off his back and laying it down he gently unrolled it. Despite its size the damn thing was full of nothing. He rolled more and more out just to see blank paper staring at him. It might be funny if it wasn't his future, whoever was playing the damn joke was going to get revenge pranked into hell. He threw the scroll open and there was nothing, he was about to use the thing as toilet paper until he saw a smudge of black ink. It was right at the end where you couldn't unroll it anymore. Naruto finished unrolling it and all that was wanted was a single jutsu. He leaned forward and read the words just to feel his hopes fall and he fell on his back. A clone jutsu, the only thing on the whole roll is a clone jutsu. You've got to be kidding me. Of course it was a clone jutsu, another great practical joke on yours truly. He sat back up and looked at it again to see if it happened to change and something caught his eye. It wasn't the normal clone jutsu that they were taught. It was something called the Mokuton. Wood clone jutsu. He looked at it some more and it didn't look hard at all. In fact, it only had a single hand sign to use it. He was really getting tired of this, everyone was probably sitting in the woods looking and laughing at him. Well, he wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching him make a fool out of himself. But then again there was still a chance that it wasn't a joke and he resigned himself to figure this out. He would do anything to be a ninja. Back at the village hidden in the leaves, Hiruzen Sarutobi looked as old as he really was. He was afraid for his surrogate grandson but didn't know what he could do to help him. Looking back, a neatly stacked pile of nudie mags on his desk was surely a setup, but in the moment, not so much. After he came back he realized the Hokage's forbidden scroll was in fact missing. The constant jokes and vandalism were easy to ignore, but the scroll had the forbidden jutsu of the past Hokages, and if it fell into the hands of terrorists or the other hidden villages, it could be disastrous. He had no other choice but to call every able ninja the village had into finding Naruto and returning the scroll. He could worry about everything after it was returned. "Sir, how could this have happened?" a Jonin asked. "It matters not, what matters is retrieving the scroll and Naruto in one piece. Find him, now." He gave his orders and the ones gathered jumped and flickered away, going to search the usual safe houses the kid used. Hiruzen retreated into his office and plucked an old glass ball from its perch. A small token from times long ago he peered into it and could see the images of Naruto and the scroll. Not knowing where this was all he could do was watch and hope he stayed safe. Iruka prided himself on knowing his students well and prayed he wasn't wrong. While everyone else was searching the village and the training grounds Naruto frequently used, Iruka jumped through the woods heading for a small shack. He prayed he would find him first, if only to give him a piece of his mind. As the shack came into view he could hear the telltale sounds of Naruto celebrating a job well done. He heard it many times when Naruto thought he had gotten away with something and relief flooded him. He landed behind the kid who was oblivious to him and saw the forbidden scroll was open and the relief he felt seconds ago left him. He walked right behind him and quietly said Naruto. Naruto turned and slowly looked up to see his teacher, Iruka sensei, staring down at him with a sickly sweet smile on his face. "Oh yes, Iruka sensei." Iruka took a deep breath and replied. "Naruto, what in the hell do you think you're doing?" Naruto shrunk under the glare of his teacher but perked up when he remembered what he had done. "Becoming a ninja, Iruka sensei. I passed the test, so hand over my headband to Konoha's newest ninja, Naruto Uzumaki." Giving himself a proud introduction and pose along with it. Warning signals went through Iruka's head. What was he talking about? "Naruto, who told you that?" Naruto looked at his sensei and turned his head to the side. "The test Mizuki told me about, he said if I could take the scroll and learn a jutsu I would pass. And since I did learn one I pass." "I sincerely doubt that." A new but familiar voice rang out of the clearing. They both turned to see Mizuki walking towards them clad in weapons. "It seems you are good for something after all, Naruto. Congratulations, you pass, you managed to betray your village and take one of its treasures. Now hand over the scroll, would you, Naruto?" Naruto paled. "What do you mean, Mizuki sensei?" Iruka put himself in between his student and Mizuki, taking out a kunai from his pouch as he approached. "Did you really think I would pass you, Naruto? I would rather do anything but let the monster become a ninja. Now stand aside, Iruka, you wouldn't protect the beast that killed your parents, would you?" Mizuki grabbed one of the large shuriken from his back and readied it. He needed the scroll, but killing the brat would be the cherry on top. "Naruto, get behind me, why are you doing this, Mizuki? Our orders are to take the scroll and Naruto in, alive." Mizuki twirled the weapon in his hands and laughed. "Those may be your orders, but mine are slightly different. I need that scroll for Lord Orochimaru. When I bring it to him he will reward me with power beyond your wildest dreams. You would work with that traitor?" Iruka growled out. Everyone knew of the horrors that the Sannin brought to the village. He was of the generation that many went missing, taken away to be a part of the experiments the man performed. You would call me a traitor when you stand in front of the monster that killed hundreds. That's rich Iruka. You more than anyone know what it has done and deserve revenge for it. Naruto squeaked out, what are you talking about, why are you calling me a monster? Mizuki let out a laugh, you mean you don't even know Naruto? Well here, let me tell you why the village hates you. Stop Mizuki, it's forbidden. Haven't you ever wondered Naruto, why the village despises you? The answer is that you are a monster. You are the nine-tailed fox, the beast that attacked the village years ago. The same monster that killed Iruka's family. Naruto fell back on his butt as what he just heard soaked in. All those years of the glares, not being allowed into places and coming home to find his windows broken and his place ransacked. It all clicked. That's why they hated him. Iruka looked back and saw how defeated Naruto was, but he couldn't help him. Mizuki took advantage of his distraction and launched the massive shuriken at the pair, and Iruka had to make a choice. It was easily avoidable, but Naruto was defenseless behind him. Knowing what he had to do, he made his choice. Naruto snapped back to reality as he heard the shuriken make contact with something. He looked on to see his mentor Iruka-sensei falling to his knees. Naruto crawled over to his teacher and saw a large gash in his leg. Tears welled up, why did you do that for me, Iruka-sensei? Iruka's expression softened, you are my student Naruto. I know that you'll do great things one day, and it's my job to make sure that happens. He pushed Naruto with one arm, now go, take the scroll and get to the village. I'll delay him long enough. Naruto couldn't just leave his sensei here with Mizuki alone. Mizuki started to advance on them, taking the other shuriken off his back and began preparing to throw it at the pair when he stopped mid-stride. Naruto stood where Iruka just was. Naruto stood in front of his teacher, making Mizuki pause. Mizuki couldn't believe what he was seeing. Did the kid really think he could do anything? He taught the brat for years and knew he didn't need to worry. You couldn't even make a single clone, Naruto, you think that you can stop me? Naruto threw his hands in the snake seal just like the scroll said and pushed as much chakra as he could. He needed it to work again. Mizuki stopped again and couldn't believe what he saw. Chakra was flowing off Naruto in waves, but more strangely was what was happening to his body. The snake seal wasn't supposed to be able to do anything by itself, but as he watched Naruto he would swear something was growing off him. Like a tree grew from the ground, it seemed like one was growing from Naruto's back. As more and more chakra was released, it grew in size and easily matched the trees surrounding the clearing. As it reached towards the sky, hundreds of branches sprouted in every direction, clouding the sky. As more grew off each other, what once used to be a clearing was now in its place, a single tree massive in size, and its branches covered the sky. Naruto stood at the base of the new growth supporting its weight and formed a clear picture of what he wanted in his mind, like the scroll said. A surge of chakra pulsed and Mizuki and Iruka could feel the quantity of it. All over the tree and its branches, small budding branches started to grow. Only they took a different shape than a normal branch. Some formed into hands and others legs, while others looked like a head growing from the tree itself. Mizuki and Iruka watched, mouths agape, as the parts gained color and the spitting images of Naruto pulled themselves free and settled on the ground and in the branches. This can't be real, it has to be a genjutsu, Mizuki hoped, and without wasting time launched the shuriken in his hands at the sea of clones, hoping they were just that, clones. But his hope was squashed as instead of passing clean through and puffing from existence, the first clone he hit stopped the weapon in its tracks. The single clone fell and lost its color, turning back into a block of wood. That shouldn't happen, there's no way that could happen. That would mean the clones were solid matter, it had to be fake. Mizuki snapped from his thoughts as Naruto spoke. Be ready, guys. Let's get started. The sea of clones converged on his former teacher, drowning him in a sea of fists and splinters. Iruka couldn't believe what he had just seen. If his eyes weren't lying to him, this was big. He still couldn't believe it even as he looked on at roots growing around Naruto reach into the ground, making the tree a permanent placement in the clearing. He pulled the headband off his own forehead and looked at the boy who just did the impossible. It looks like Konoha would be getting a new ninja after all. Break. Hiruzen Sarutobi was rarely at a loss for words. He had seen much in his long life and lived through 2 great ninja wars. But this was going to end that long life. Naruto possessing the Mokuton, the wood style, the style of the legendary first Hokage, was not something he ever thought could happen. He tried to find a link through his parents, but couldn't explain it if he tried. Looking up at the monument dedicated to his teachers, he smiled. It seemed the Senjus weren't as dead as he thought. The Senju clan never produced another Mokuton user since Hashirama, and with his student being the last member of the once prestigious clan, it looked like it never would. The clan was considered all but dead, but perhaps that would change. His thoughts were interrupted as that very boy walked through his door carrying the same scroll he stole what seemed like so long ago. That's what I did, old man. I'm Ozawa Iruka-sensei. He rubbed the back of his head where his teeth just struck. Naruto, that's not how you speak to the Hokage, now do what I told you to do. Oh yay, Hokage-sama, I apologize for my actions. I accept any punishment. Getting on one knee felt really weird, especially in front of the old man. But Iruka-sensei said it was probably a good idea and that they could get Ramen if he did. Hiruzen smiled, after all these years this was the first time Naruto referred to him as his title, and if he was being honest, it felt weird. Very well, but I see no need for any punishment. It's obvious the real traitor was Mizuki, and as such he will bear the responsibility and punishment for his actions. He took his seat and looked at them both. I'm proud of both of you tonight, you both showed character, especially you Naruto. And as such I think you earned something, but I see Iruka is ahead of me there. Naruto beamed under the praise, and his eyes darted to his new headband. We will need to talk tomorrow, but for tonight, enjoy your graduation. Iruka and Naruto walked out of his office and headed towards the ramen restaurant. Hiruzen sighed and got to work, tomorrow would be a long day. Break. Naruto woke up bright and early because today was going to be a good day. He couldn't wait to learn more about his newfound skill and especially try out new jutsu. As Konoha's future Hokage he knew a lot about the previous ones, and while the first wasn't his favorite, it was a close second. He was tempted to keep practicing right now, but he knew the old man was waiting for him. As he walked through the village the glares he got were especially bad, looks like they found out about his latest mess up. Usually this made him want to paint something, but nothing could lower his spirits today. Walking into the tower the receptionist gave him the usual stink eye, he was convinced that if she could, she would keep him out. He burst through the door, without knocking of course, and saw the old man. Ah Naruto, I'm surprised to see you up so early after last night. I have a bunch of questions, plus once you go to the bathroom, going back to sleep isn't easy. Naruto launched while Hiruzen sighed, at least last night didn't change him. Moving on, I wanted to explain to you the situation you are now in. As well as discuss some of the things that were brought up last night. As you know the Mokuton or wood style that you performed last night was a technique of our founder Hashirama Senju. Hashirama used it along with Madara to create the village. The only strange thing about it is that you would show the ability for it, considering it's a bloodline ability much like the sharingan. I thought the Senju clan was classified as an extinct clan, how could I have its bloodline limit? Naruto remembered reading that the clan was classified as alive but was considered extinct. Hiruzen sagged in his chair. It is essentially extinct, the Senju clan is down to its last surviving member not counting you. And she left the village years ago. Why did she leave? She lost too much in the last war. Since then she cut all ties with the village and hasn't been seen since. He only had one student that didn't either hate or want to destroy the village, and Jiraiya wouldn't have been his first pick. So am I even part of the clan? I mean I have to be right, I can use the Mokuton. I don't think it will be that easy Naruto. I for one have no clue how you even could use it, let alone any family connection. But until proven otherwise I would say yes. Just being able to use the wood style should prove your claim. But I think we need to talk about more pressing matters. I understand Mizuki told you about the nine-tailed fox. Naruto's mood dropped when the old man mentioned that. It wasn't easy to ignore, and now that it was brought up it hurt. In hindsight it made sense. The stares, glares, and thinly veiled comments all now stood out, and it was clear why he was always singled out. He could count on one hand the people in his life that didn't treat him like dirt. I need to apologize to you Naruto. I failed to do enough for you and was content to leave things as they were, in secret. I couldn't erase the hate the villagers had for the Nine Tails, and so I made it forbidden to speak of it. I let them belittle you and act out against you. Hiruzen looked down in shame. I could have and should have done much more than I did, and I can only ask for your forgiveness narrative. His apology was cut short courtesy of the blood missile that engulfed him in a bear hug. Hiruzen gladly returned the embrace with a hint of tears growing in his eyes. After a long moment they broke apart and Naruto spoke up. I don't blame you Jiji, and knowing the reason for it, I can't blame them either. But I'll still change their minds and become Hokage even with this thing inside me. Thank you Naruto for easing an old man's heart. I believe we have more to talk about, but it seems like time has escaped us. If I am not mistaken the new graduates have a meeting in 5 minutes. Naruto's head whipped around to the clock hanging over the entrance door and saw it was almost 9. Crap, I've gotta run Jiji, I'll talk to you later. Naruto ran over to the window and opened it. See you Gramps. He said as he jumped from the top of the tower, heading in the direction of the school. Hiruzen shook his head at the usual antics he dealt with. He sat back down to deal with the paperwork the Naruto situation created and let out a laugh. I don't know who I should be more worried for, Naruto or my son. And that's the first chapter rewrite. Please send me any grammatical errors you see as I would like to fix them if I missed any. I got many of them, but some are bound to slip through the cracks. Let me know how you like the story so far. 66. Chapter 2. The rumors. Hiruzen muffled a yawn, it was much too early to be awake with no village ending problem at his age. It was a young man's game to be awake so early, but with the revelations last night a few changes needed to be made. Every year a meeting of Jonin and the Hokage was held regarding the graduating class at the academy. The majority of years this took a few minutes at most, but this year was special to say the least. For the first time in generations the new crop of graduates had a representative from every major clan in the village. It was almost like they planned it to make his job harder. So, this year's meeting was going to take a good bit longer as he couldn't just assign the teams at random or based on grades like he would want. He was happy that Naruto had taken the first step on his path to become Hokage, but couldn't he do it a year earlier? He rubbed his temples and tried to massage the headache away. Naruto was dead last in the academy, while Sasuke Uchiha was the rookie of the year. This was usually an automatic placement, but with both of them possessing one of their village's founders' bloodline, it was too risky to put them on the same team. One accident and both bloodlines could be gone forever. Soon the Jonin began entering his office and gave their respect to him. He honestly wished he would have brought a camera when he let the news break. For multiple years he had been receiving complaints and advisements against Naruto being led into the academy to become a ninja. He had briefly thought about trying to keep his status under wraps until he was stronger, but Naruto keeping a secret, especially one such as the wood style, was laughable. I call this meeting to order. And the room went quiet as he spoke. It is time to choose this year's genin teams, but some new discoveries are going to make this year slightly different. He said, hiding a small smile. Sir, a newly promoted but accomplished Genjutsu master spoke up. What new discoveries are you talking about? It's been less than a day since the graduation ceremony. The few faces of the Jonin realized that the discovery and incident with Naruto last night were probably related, and the majority of them had dark looks on their faces. Hiruzen felt it was best to rip off the band-aid now, rather than let it simmer. Naruto Uzumaki has proved himself and as such is to be considered graduated from the academy this year. The room exploded with noise, no one caring that they were in the presence of the Hokage anymore. Most of them had just been told the nine-tailed fox was now a ninja of the leaf. Certain comments could be heard even above the noise of the crowd. He was already given special treatment in the academy. Now you pass him from the academy. We all know he failed the final exam. You can't let that monster be a ninja. Hiruzen was tiring of this, he let his chakra leak out and scowled at the group. The newly promoted shrunk under his glare and chakra, forgetting that even though he was an old man, he was still the strongest in the village. His son Asuma Saratobi was used to this kind of thing. His father letting his chakra flare wasn't as scary as it used to be. He could still vividly remember when his father caught him smoking the night he became a Chunin. Back in his prime, now that was scary. Hearing that Naruto had passed was a pleasant surprise. He knew the kid pretty well since the kid visited his dad as much as he could over the years. He was energetic, but from the records he had seen he was probably the worst genin in history. His father hadn't told him anything, so he took a long drag of his cigarette and waited to hear what happened to the kid. Garina Yuhi had only heard the rumors about him, never having met him herself, and she didn't like what she heard. Habitual prankster and underachiever, not a good combination. If she was picked to train him she could probably do it, with a few select Genjutsu you could do anything, she smiled at the thought. Now before I get started, I want to give you the option to decline. I don't want to have to force anyone to be his sensei if I don't have to. Who would not be opposed to having Naruto placed on their team? To his surprise more than he would have thought volunteered. Normally this would be a good thing, but in the village there were only about 3 Jonin he considered to be qualified to be able to protect him, and one of them decided not to show up. Good, that makes it much easier. Sir, you haven't told us what he did to prove himself. Last night I understand he was the one to steal the forbidden scroll, so how did that action earn him the position of genin? Yes, well, I will remind you that while this information is not forbidden within the village, you are forbidden to share the news to anyone outside the leaf. Naruto Uzumaki has shown the ability to use the wood style. You could hear a pin drop in the room, well you could if Asuma hadn't inhaled his cigarette when he heard the news and was coughing his lungs out. The rest of the room was in shock from hearing that the wood style was in the hands of perhaps the worst ninja in the village. Well, that's interesting. Kakashi Haddock broke the speaking silence from the windowsill, reading his ever-present series. As interesting as it is, it does make team placements more of a headache. Hiruzen Saratobi was annoyed, he broke the moment too early by showing up late. He wished to see the look of horror on their faces a bit longer before he got back to business. Special Jonin stay, everyone else you are returned to your duties. Kakashi, nice of you to finally join us instead of merely listening in from the window. He stepped into the office from the window and shut his book. If I had known it would be so interesting I would have shown up early. He received doubtful expressions at that statement. Unfortunately it does mess up placements pretty badly if I'm not wrong. He is dead last in the year, but mixing those bloodlines might not be a good idea. Hiruzen had to agree, Kakashi had all but begged him to let him teach Naruto when he graduated, and now that didn't seem likely. With Sasuke Uchiha passing with flying colors, he needed to be on Kakashi's team. But the Mokuton and the Sharingan on the same team this early was too much of a risk. There was only a few ninja he would trust with such a responsibility of having either of them on their teams, and he was out of options. Kakashi and Guy were the strongest the village had to offer, but Guy already had a team, and now Kakashi was out of the equation as well. Guranai Yohu might be an option, but she was freshly promoted to special jonin, and while strong in her own right was still fresh and hadn't led a team of genin yet. That left on option, and there was no one else he trusted more than his son. Asuma will be his sensei. I will be getting angry letters from their heads, but the trio might need to be split up. Placements will be delayed until Monday so I can rearrange teams. You are all dismissed while I fix this mess. As he walked out, Asuma shook his head. This was going to be a nightmare, but not for him. Thankfully his wallet would survive his team. Choji's appetite was quite large, and now it was someone else's problem. He wondered where his team might want to eat it, not knowing his hubris and the terror his wallet would later endure. Break and flashback. Naruto ran through the streets towards the academy. Thankfully this should be the very last day he would ever spend in that godforsaken place. He would just slip in the back and no one would notice him. But as got close he could see Iruka sensei locking the door. He pushed himself and made it just in time to hear the click of the lock. Panting, he looked up at his former teacher with a knowing look on his face. Good of you to finally show up, Naruto, but you are late and missed the team placements. Naruto was about to protest, but Iruka stopped him from even starting. Luckily I expected this, to be honest. You got lucky, Naruto. It was delayed until Monday to rework the teams, so make sure you aren't late. Because if you are, so help me, I will drag you back to the academy kicking and screaming. Naruto fell on his butt and laid out on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed he was going to wait a few days until he met the lucky bastards he was going to be stuck with. Naruto walked down the street excited for the days to come. He had passed the academy finally and now had a chance to achieve his dream. I think this deserves some more ramen if you ask me. The long walk to Ichiraku's passed extremely slow though because of the unusual looks that were being thrown his way. He was used to the hateful glares and the mutterings, they were just life for him. What he wasn't used to were the curious looks and glares that looked almost hungry, like someone had hit the jackpot. Weirdos, he thought, and sped up. As he arrived he pushed those thoughts away and focused on one of the only safe spots he had in the village. Tucci and his daughter Am had never looked at him hatefully and always welcomed him and wanted to talk to him. He knew at first it was because of how much he spent here, but now it seemed like he could relax and be himself. 10 bowls of pork ramen and keep him coming. Tucci smiled at the young boy still celebrating from last night, Naruto. As he got more noodles ready. Believe it, and what better way than more ramen? Showing off his impressively large smile. Well then, let's get you fed, Naruto. It's not every day a young man becomes a ninja now, is it? Tucci pushed a large bowl in front of him and Naruto dug in. So, Naruto, tell me about how you passed. I couldn't get a word in last night between Iruka and how much you were eating. Naruto quickly finished off the broth in his second bowl and excitedly began to retell the story. Needless to say, the ramen shop owner could barely believe that he could use such a legendary style, but Naruto was never one to lie. That's amazing, Naruto, your ramen's on me today as a graduation gift. Naruto beamed thanks Tucci-san as he got started on another bowl. Naruto knew that he needed to grow up a little bit, even he could admit that. Before it was a cry for attention and for someone to care about him, but now he had somewhere where he belonged. After a hearty and filling lunch of way too much ramen, Naruto headed towards one of the training grounds. He knew he still had a bit until they met with their sensei, but he couldn't stand to sit still and do nothing for all that time. He wanted to train, only he had no clue what he was doing. Once he got to the empty field he realized he really should have paid more attention. Slacking really hurt him in all departments, and he needed to get up to speed before he really embarrassed himself. He couldn't practice shuriken because he only had one pair, but he could train his body. He might not be able to do much in less than a week, but hey, it was better than nothing. Hokage's office. You called for me, Hokage-sama. Knelling with his head down. Yes, Tenzin, I did. You can take off your mask. This won't required. Hiruzen spoke looking out on the village. I'm sure you've heard the fact that we have a new Mokuton user in the village now. Yes sir, I have. He said in the usual robotic Anbu way. You are the only other person alive with experience in the wood style, so if you don't mind, I would like for you to teach him the basics if you can. He has already shown a surprising amount of skill, but lacks any basic control over his bloodline. Hiruzen wondered, if he could already make dozens of clones at a time, what would it be like if he had formal training? He might have another Hashirama in his hands. Tenzin nodded. Of course sir, I have a decent idea where to start. The Hokage smiled. Perfect, instead of your codename, you are to use the name Yamato when he asks. He paused and huffed. It seems like Naruto is heading for some last-minute training. You are free to act how you please. Dismissed. The newly named Yamato hurried out and headed to the training field. It was rather exciting for him, a new wood-style user, the first natural one in many years. Even though his abilities weren't natural, he felt a kinship with Naruto already. As he arrived at the training field, what he saw almost made him laugh. A small orange blur was running himself ragged, desperately getting in that last little bit of training before he met his new team. He wondered what he should try to get him to learn. He was taught in a harsh, unforgiving environment under Danzo. He shivered, he knew he couldn't make him go through anything like that. The light bulb went off in his head. He knew just how to start off his training. Let's see how much affinity he really has. Chapter 3. Growing pains. This was it, he was dying, this was what death felt like. Naruto didn't think that laps would hurt this much with all the running he did when he ran from the ninja after his pranks, but this sucked. Though now that he thought about it, he mostly hid once he got a little distance. He sat on his ass trying to catch his breath when he noticed a village shinobi was walking towards him. "You okay, Naruto?" Naruto slowed his breathing and took deep breaths. "Yeah, I'm good, just lost my breath." "Wait a second, how do you know my name?" If he knew his name already, then he didn't hear it associated with anything good. "The name's Yamato, the Hokage sent me here to give you a little help." "What kind of help?" "I haven't even met my team yet." "Wait, are you gonna show me a new jutsu?" Naruto asked excitedly. Kids, Yamato thought. "Not exactly, I'm here because I have a little experience with the wood style." Naruto's mouth gaped open like a fish. How? Yamato smirked. "That's for me to know and you not to find out, now let's get started." Yamato sat next to Naruto on the ground. "Let me ask you a question, what do you know about the Mokuton or wood style?" He had a feeling he would be starting from scratch. Naruto knew this question. Planning to be Hokage, he had looked up all he could about the previous Hokages. His access was limited as the librarian hated him, albeit for good reason. Nevertheless, he knew a decent amount about all the Hokages. It's the legendary style of the first, it's how he became the strongest ninja in the world. It's a mix of water and earth chakra, whatever that means. Oh god, he barely knew anything. Okay, well, let's start with the basics. The wood release is a unique bloodline limit that comes from the interaction of earth and water elemental chakras. This means that you will have a high affinity for both earth and water jutsu, and they will come easier for you as well. The wood style is actually a mix of both Kekkei Genkai and a bloodline limit, as you need both factors to be able to use the wood style. If someone had both water and earth release Kekkei Genkai but no Senju blood, it would present in another form, such as the mud release for example. Naruto was eating out of the palm of his hand. He never knew it could be so complicated, but it sounded badass. Just having a Kekkei Genkai sounded cool as hell, but the wood release was on another level. Making Hokage was going to be easy as pie. "Now Naruto, what jutsu are you able to use right now?" "I've only tried the wood clone, I haven't been able to look at the scroll again to see if I missed anything else." "Well, that's a start, now another question. Do you know how you are actually using wood style?" Like he suspected, Naruto shook his head. When you use a Mokuton jutsu, it isn't like other styles in the sense that you make your chakra do what you want it to, such as the fireball jutsu where you breath out chakra and ignite it with a fire elemental change. The Mokuton is a style that uses chakra as a fuel source, not for destruction, but for creation. You are making life when you use a wood jutsu. And with your chakra you can then shape it into what you need it to be. He could tell Naruto wasn't following once he finished. "What are you struggling with, Naruto?" Naruto was dumbfounded, he had never heard of chakra being used like that. The academy, in all its glory, taught that chakra was a tool that powered jutsu. Even jutsu that made stuff like mud walls or great balls of fire were in some form just the base element shaped with chakra. An old instructor once made a huge gust of wind from just a small breath of air, but even he had told them that all he did was infuse chakra into him to blow it out like a hurricane. But hearing that he could and was creating life was on a whole other level. "I'm just don't understand how it works, I guess. But I will, believe it. Let me say it this way, the earth is your partner. Every tree and plant is your bread and butter when it comes to using the wood release. They can be used as a starting point for your jutsu until you are more comfortable. Eventually you can turn your body into a weapon and make almost anything from the versatile element." Yamato pulled a small seed from his pocket. "This is your new best friend until you can master it. This is what you'll be training with." He put the seed in Naruto's hand. "Now channel some chakra into the seed." Naruto focused on his palm and tried to force chakra through it. It was much harder than using hand signs, and he already sucked most of them. His hand let off a soft blue glow, and seed began to shake. He lost his concentration as he saw the change, and the glow disappeared. The seed instantly shriveled up and lost all life it was beginning to show. "What happened?" "I barely did anything to it." Naruto held the dead seedling in his hand. "Exactly, you didn't give it enough chakra. Too little, and anything you try this with will shrivel up and die. If you give it too much, the growth will be too rapid. Think of it as filling a balloon, if you overfill it, it will pop." Yamato pulled out another identical seed and placed it in the palm of his own hand. The seed slowly sprouted and grew into a red lily at full bloom. And when it's just right it will thrive. Naruto shook his head at what he saw, and when he opened his eyes there wasn't anyone there. How in the hell did he do that? He needed to learn two things now, one how to make a seed grow in his hands like that and two, how did that Yamato guy even do that? He needed to get some more seeds, but he only knew of one flower shop in Konoha, and he would rather go anywhere else. Ino was just as bad as Sakura, yelling at him and throwing haymakers left and right. He really didn't want to deal with her today, but it would be a chance to show off his headband to her. The entire class, her included, mocked him that he was going to fail again, and while it was technically true, he also technically passed. As he walked towards the shopping district of the village he racked his brain, how in the hell did that Yamato guy make the plant grow? Did he have the Mokuton too? It was supposed to be a dead style until Naruto came along. Well, it meant that maybe he had another family member, it also hurt a little. When he learned about the wood style, he thought he was special because he was the last one. He knew it was jealousy to think that way, but it was the first time in his life that he was one of a kind. People might treat him differently now that he was a Senju, and he was so scared that it may change with another Mokuton user in the picture. Scene break. Ino sat behind the counter to her parents' flower shop, well really her mom's flower show as her dad was a shinobi, bored out of her mind. This time of year was always slow. Besides the odd birthday or anniversary there were no major holidays like Valentine's or anything like that, so not many people came and bought flowers. As bored as she was still excited, in a few days she would meet her team and begin her shinobi life taking missions. She would no longer have to sit behind the counter all year long selling flowers, as much as she loved flowers it did get a little repetitive. The team placements didn't even happen yet. Apparently something big happened and now they needed time to rework every team, so they needed the weekend to fix everything. Hopefully she would have her Sasuke-kun on her team without the forehead following her. She needed some alone time with her black-haired raven. Though she knew it was a long shot, her dad was a part of the famous Ino Shikacho team and she would probably have to follow suit. She could barely think of a worse team, lazy-ass Shikamaru and snack hoarder Choji. But hey, a girl could hope. Her dad had hinted that this year was going to be exciting for Genin, but she couldn't see it yet. As she was imagining having Sasuke call to herself, the bell above the door rang signaling a customer. "Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop, how can I help? Oh, it's you. What do you want, Naruto?" Of course Naruto was here to make a bad day worse. "Hey Ino, do you sell the seeds to flowers here?" What a dumb question, this was a flower shop, of course they sold flower seeds. "Yay, what do you want them for?" she asked. Though he might as well buy roses instead of seeds for his dead shinobi career. Naruto browsed through the large selection of cut and trimmed flowers. "Training," he curtly responded. Ino snorted, "It's a little late for that baka, but I guess an early start for next year's final wouldn't hurt." She sneered at that last part to add a little more venom. Naruto noticed how she responded and decided to tell her the good news. "Didn't you know, Ino, I'm officially a genin, just like you." He tapped his forehead protector showing it off. Ino snapped her head at Naruto and looked in close. "How in the hell did you pass, Naruto? We all saw you fail to make a clone in class." Naruto held up his hand stopping her rant. "I guess you'll find out later if you don't know. So can I buy some seeds?" he asked again. Ino huffed, she would make her dad tell her how the idiot passed when he came home from his mission. "Fine, how many do you want?" The faster she sold them the fast he would leave. Naruto checked his frog wallet and it was nearly empty. Now that he was a ninja he only had one more allowance from Jiji coming before they would stop and any money he made from missions would have to support him. His cheeks flushed a little bit when he said, "I guess can I get a few packs of your cheapest kind?" Ino huffed. Fine, she grabbed a few packets of the common daisy. "Here now, that will be 1,000 yen. Naruto handed over the money and started to open one of the packs. Ino had never heard of any type of training that used flower seeds and she had to admit she was a little curious as to what he was going to do. Naruto placed a single seed in his hands and began to push chakra through his palms. Ino stood on her tippy toes to see over the counter to what he was doing. Naruto pushed his chakra hard and the seedling in his hand rapidly expanded and exploded. It was like a bomb had gone off inside it and plant matter went everywhere. Flower petals and leaves covered the ground while mushy green plant insides were all over the ceiling and walls. What in the fuck was that, Naruto? Ino screamed. 1, she had never seen anything like that, and 2, the mess was everywhere. Damn, I guess that's what he meant by explodes then. Naruto wiped the muck off his face so he could see properly. Oh. Naruto noticed the irate Ino staring at him with fury written all over her face. Damn right, oh you nincompoop, what the hell was that? Naruto made a break for the door but was stopped as his collar was grabbed and he was clotheslined. You aren't going anywhere until you clean up this mess. She dragged him over to the broom and mop and threw him on top of them. Get started. Fine. Naruto decided to take some responsibility and clean up this mess and got started. He looked around and realized he was going to be here for a long time. Ino was on one hand rightfully pissed off. Naruto made a huge mess in her mom's store, and if it wasn't shining by the time she came back she was screwed. On the other hand, she was dying to know just what Naruto had tried to do. She withheld for as long as she could but couldn't contain her question. So, what were you trying to do? You better have not just come here to make a mess. Maybe she could learn what he was doing and impress Sasuke. It couldn't be that hard if Naruto was trying to do it. Naruto didn't look up as he continued to sweep the floor. I was trying to make the flower grow, but as you can see I'm not good at it yet. This is going to take forever, could you maybe help a little bit? He pleaded. He didn't want to lose a whole day of new training for this. Ino gave him a dirty look that mirrored the shop. You made the mess, you clean it up. She might get in trouble if it wasn't done, but no way in hell was she going to touch all that muck he made. After an hour of scrubbing it seemed like he had made zero progress. It was like the shit was growing and spreading as he cleaned it up, and there was no way he was going to get it done today by himself. He wanted to use his clones, but really wanted to have a big reveal with more people. But after getting up and looking around at the other half of the store, he decided it was a lost cause. Ino was getting progressively more nervous as time went on. Her mom would be getting back soon, and if she walked into this, she was dead. Dead before her first mission, that had to be a record. She was about to join the idiot who made the mess when he spoke up. Ino, can you please keep a secret? Depends on what the secret is. If you can I can clean up this mess in just a few minutes, so please tell me. Naruto had already wasted the day and didn't want to spend the whole night cleaning up plant muck. Ino really didn't believe him. How could he clean this up in that short of time? It would take a team of cleaners hours to fully get it clean. But she had nothing to lose, either he cleaned it or she would be grounded, so she cautiously accepted. Fine, I'll keep your little secret. But so help me God, if this mess doesn't go away when my mom gets home before she kills me I'll kill you. She emphasized, raising her fist threateningly. Thanks, now multi-wood clone jutsu. He slapped his hands into the snake seal. Ino could only stare in shock as 5 logs freaking grew from his back and formed into perfect clones of him. The 5 clones looked around and saw the mess, then looked at the real Naruto with dread in their eyes. Alright you guys, get cleaning. He tossed a mop and broom at 8 clones and they grudgingly got to work cleaning. Ino was speechless. They had learned about the wood release at the academy, but she was seeing it on person. Only a few people still alive could make that claim. Naruto. Would you mind telling me what that was? She said in a much too sweet voice. That was the secret you promised to keep, Ino. I'm the newest part of the Senju clan. Please don't tell anyone though, I want to see the look on their faces when people find out. Naruto knew it was petty, but he wanted to have one time where he could rub something good in their faces. He made a mental note to carry a camera with him to capture the moments in the future. All done boss. Naruto and Ino looked around and the place was clean as a whistle. They were safe for now at least. Naruto, seeing that the clones did their job, decided to go ahead and dispel them before the whole village knew what he could do. He put his hands in the correct seal and dispelled his 5 clones, curious as to what they would leave behind. Normal clones jutsu, like the one they were taught, left behind no evidence bar a small cloud of smoke that quickly dissipated into the air. Wood clones weren't just illusions, but solid chunks of wood saturated with chakra. As they lost their color and shape, they disintegrated into a small pile of wood shavings and chunks of rotting wood. Lucky for him they were just small enough to be picked up with a broom. Thanks for the seeds, Ino. See you later. He was going to wait until tomorrow to keep training with the seeds. He needed to be outside before he tried that again. This doesn't change anything, Naruto Baka, you were still dead last for a reason. She called out after him. Ino had to admit that this new revelation shook her, but just like she said, didn't change anything. He was still the same kid from the academy, lazy, immature, and a headache. He couldn't change that fast. Ino sat back behind the counter as her mom walked in, back from a day of shopping. Hello Ino dear, anything happened today? As much as she wanted to talk about it, she promised. No mom, nothing at all. She went back to daydreaming about being on Sasuke's team until closing. Chapter 4. Word gets out. Shikamaru opened his eyes and shut them quickly as the sun was peeking through his window. Today was the day they got their team placements and he could already hear his mom working on breakfast. This was going to suck. People called him lazy, and if he was being honest that was a fair assessment. He didn't like going out of his way to do things, and if he could get by doing the bare minimum, he would. It was just easier that way, but days like this he really regretting following in his father's footsteps. He knew the end goal, but man, that was a long way away. His father was a respected clan leader, had a wife who cooked and cleaned, and he spent most days doing whatever he wanted. He made the classic blunder of idolizing his dad, and now he was paying the price. It was troublesome, but the payoff would be a dream come true. Life as a shinobi was always short and only ended in 2 ways. Death being the most common end and the whole grail, early retirement. When he hit that, life would be good. Just when he was at his most comfortable and at the point where you drift off to sleep, his blinds were wrenched open and he was blinded. He rubbed his eyes and tried in vain to block the sun when mother scolded him. "Shikamaru, would you get up, you're getting too old for your mother to wake you up for the day. Troublesome." He muttered under his breath. His mother hadn't lived with Inara for the better part of her life, so she had grown accustomed to listening for those kind of whispers. "Shikamaru dear, if you don't get up and be on time today, I'll be sure to tell your class that your mother still dresses you." Shikamaru looked at his mom in horror. "You wouldn't? Try me." And with that she left Arum as he scrambled to get out of bed. He wouldn't put it past his mom to actually follow through with that threat. This is going to be a long-ass day. He got dressed and headed off towards the academy grounds. Last night his father had the weekly gathering of the Ino Shikacho trio, so that meant he got to hand out with Choji and had to put up with Ino. Surprisingly, Ino wasn't as bad as usual, which was out of character for her. Ever since they all started the academy together and she caught sight of Sasuke, she was unbearable to be around. But last night she was quiet. Naturally, Choji had to poke the bear and ask her why she was so quiet, why couldn't he just enjoy it while they could. Turns out Naruto managed to pass, good for him, but that shouldn't have shut her up. In fact, she should have been louder, complaining about the injustice of it all. The day was going to be an interesting day at least, so he shouldn't be as bored as usual. He could try and figure it out before he got there, but he could wait. Maybe he could get a nap in before everything started if he was lucky. Scene break. Naruto, on the other hand, could barely keep himself contained. Going to sleep last night was a fool's errand, so he was running on about 3 hours of sleep, but he was still wired. He couldn't wait to meet his sensei and begin taking on dangerous missions to all parts of the world, maybe even meet a girl or two. The only thing that was souring his mood was the fact he was probably going to be on the fancy smancy Uchiha's team. Being dead last meant he was going to be on the Rookie of the Year's team, so that sucked. But before that he still couldn't wait to see the looks on all his doubters' faces when they learned he did in fact pass the academy. He really hoped he got the most baddest sensei because he was struggling with the newest training he was taking on. He had gotten exactly nowhere with the seed training he was doing. He could make freaking clones of himself out of wood, but he couldn't make a seed grow without dying or exploding. After the slight mishap in Ino's flower shop, he headed to the many training grounds the next day to really get started. In the span of a few hours he had gone through most of his seeds. Half drying up in his hands and the other half going off like a bomb right in his face. Plant muck was nasty, but plant muck in your underwear and in between your unmentionables, that was not fun at all. He couldn't even tell if he was making any progress because all his concentration was on the seed. He had a lot of questions for that Yamato guy, but he hadn't seen hide nor hair of the guy since that day. He got to the academy more than an hour early to make sure he could see everyone's faces as they walked in and saw him. He patted his pocket to check again that he brought a camera. There was no way he is going to miss this. Walking into the classroom he saw Choji and Shikamaru were even earlier than him and were in their usual spots. "Hey Naruto, I see that Ino wasn't lying, congrats on passing." Shikamaru barely even looked up, but that wasn't anything unusual. "Congratulations Naruto, want a piece of beef jerky?" Choji offered him the bag he was currently snacking on. Choji and Shikamaru were probably the closest things to friends he had in the academy. While everyone else treated him like the plague, Shikamaru was the first one to treat him like a person. He didn't know whether he was a good person or just too lazy to bother, but it still counted. Choji was just a good person and tried to make friends with everybody, him included. Naruto grabbed a piece of jerky and bit into it. "Thanks Choji. Do you guys have any idea on what the teams are gonna be?" Shikamaru just shrugged. "Choji and I are probably going to be on a team with Ino if history repeats itself. Though I pray to God that she doesn't get put with us, I couldn't think of anything more troublesome." Slowly but surely the classroom gradually began to fill up as people arrived. Bets were starting to get placed on why it was delayed or who would be on whose team. Sasuke arrived and the noise level dropped. As usual he was walking like he owned the place, and when he spotted Naruto, he gave him a disgusted look. Not that it wasn't entirely undeserved. Naruto was dead last, and Sasuke was on the top of the class. Like the other kids from clans he got training years before he even entered the academy. His jutsu and throwing skills were far above the rest of the class, and he knew it. But it didn't give him the right to act like an ass all the time. Like clockwork, right after he entered the room the entire class of girls rushed in behind him, momentarily getting stuck at the door. Naruto could have sworn he saw a guy classmate get trampled underneath them as they rushed to grab a seat next to their crush, poor guy. Naturally there was only one seat left next to Sasuke as he snagged a seat against the wall, so a bickering war broke out as to who would sit next to him. He with Shikamaru and Choji covered their ears as the noise level grew. He spotted Hinata, Kiba, and Shino enter the room as Iruka herded the rest of them inside. The noise stopped as Sakura and Ino sat pretty much on top of each other next to Sasuke, and the rest grabbed a seat so they could hear if they managed to get on Sasuke's team. Welcome back everyone and congratulations again for passing the exam. Today you will all meet your senseis and your teams. From here on out I'm no longer your teacher, so I hope you'll give them the same respect you gave me. Yes, Sakura. Sakura put her hand down and gave Naruto a dirty look. Iruka-sensei, why is Naruto here? He failed the exam, this meeting is for those who managed to pass. Naruto's reputation meant that he was not a popular dude. In fact, when Sakura mentioned that he was there, the rest of the class voiced their agreement that he shouldn't be there. This would have hurt if this was a normal day, but today he was going to wipe the smirk off their faces. Iruka was about to respond, but Naruto spoke up first. This is going to be a disaster. I forgot this, Iruka-sensei. For your information, Sakura-chan, I managed to get a clone jutsu down, and since that was the only part I failed, the Hokage saw fit to pass me. He proudly displayed his protector on his head. Kiba caught the emphasis in his sentence. Naruto, what do you mean by a clone jutsu? We were only taught one in the academy. He knew there were tons of others, but the academy only taught the most basic one. He was taught the man-beast clone, and he knew Shino was taught another clan-specific one, but Naruto wanted part of any clan he knew of, and learning an advanced clone jutsu in less than a day was impossible. That's the good news I wanted to tell everyone in person. As of a few days ago I can be considered part of the Senju clan. The silence was deafening, no one except Naruto and Iruka were even moving. Iruka was shaking his head, he should have known that Naruto would pull something like this. It was supposed to be kept a secret for as long as possible, but obviously he didn't get the memo. Kiba was the first to break the silence. Ha, good one Naruto, you almost had me there. Better luck next time. While Kiba was laughing, the rest of the class bar were scowling at him. He was disrespecting the founder of Konoha and two of its Hokages. That's not something you joke about, jackass. Someone shouted. Iruka decided he needed to step in now before it went any further. He really didn't feel like dealing with a classroom brawl in his last moments with his class. Everyone, as Naruto just announced to the class, he might be part of the Senju clan. A few days ago he showed the ability to use the Mokuton, or wood release, as we all learned. Lots of thoughts were running rampant in the classroom as they digested this information. Choji was happy for his friend because Naruto seemed very happy at the fact. Shikamaru didn't understand why he would care about that stuff, it just meant a whole lot of more work, as the Senju held a seat on the council. Kiba was on guard as he had already written Naruto off as an Omega, but now he might creep on his territory as second strongest. Ino still found it hard to believe, but since she had already seen him in action, accepted it as fact. Hinata was surprised, with Naruto coming from such a respected clan, maybe her father would put her down for wanting to associate with him anymore. Sakura was on a see it to believe it state of mind. Even if the Hokage himself said it, she wouldn't buy it until he proved it. Shino thought it was only logical that he was a Senju if he could use the Mokuton, it was after all common sense to make a connection there. Sasuke was a different story because it was well documented that the Senju and the Uchiha had a complicated past. Sasuke grew up on stories about how the Senju punished and prosecuted his clan. His father always cursed Aburama Senju for pushing them to the outskirts of the village they helped found. The legends of Madara were always talked about with how Hashirama pushed him out of the decisions of the village. After all, generations of war didn't go away that fast. Sasuke would prove with this generation that the Uchiha were the strongest clan in the Hidden Leaf. And now that the dead last had the Mokuton, it would actually be a fair fight. The Uchiha and the Senju could both control a tailed beast, and Sasuke was determined to prove that the Uchiha were the real founders. When everyone's brains started to work again, the room exploded with noise. Many of the civilian genin were backpedaling hard and asking Naruto to sit next to them. But Iruka cut them off quiet. Now listen carefully for your team placements. Team 7, your team leader will be Kakashi Haddock, the members are Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Kiba Inuzuka. Sakura squealed in delight while Ino scowled. Of course, the forehead would be on his team, now all she could hope for was a team that wasn't going to be miserable. Team 8, your leader will be Kurana Yuhi, its members are Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburam, and Choji Akimichi. Ino's scowl deepened, of course she would get the worst two teammates in the academy. Dead last and second to last, she dropped her head on the desk cursing fate and waited for the hammer to nail her fate in. Team 10, your leader is Asuma Tsurutobi, its members are Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Naruto Uzumaki. Ino's heart died in her chest and she started to cry on the inside. Shikamaru was shook awake by his friend Choji, who told him he was on Team 10 and promptly went back to sleep. Naruto was excited, this was the beginning, the day he would look back on as the day he started. And with Iruka's announcement ending, two Jonin entered the room. Now will Team 10 follow your new sensei Asuma, and will Team 8 follow Mizuki? Team 7, your sensei will come to get you, so just sit tight. He pitied Team 7, they were going to be here for a while. Hopefully they wouldn't be sent back to him, but Kakashi seemed to like doing that. After he got through the clan children, he finished up the rest of the civilian shinobi. It was usually the civilians turned shinobi that had to repeat, so he knew most of them would be back. Break. Naruto, Shikamaru, and Ino followed their new sensei as he led them to an empty classroom. Asuma looked at his new students and sized them up. From the academy records, they were severely below par. The Yamanaka scored slightly above average in the classroom but was ranked low when it came to skills and hand-to-hand fighting. The Nara was just above failing on everything, but he knew that wasn't right. He knew his father, and if he had to guess, he was scoring that low on purpose for some reason. And then there was Naruto, dead last on paper tests and dead last on sparring as well. But since the incident, nothing could be trusted anymore on him. He was always placed with the Uchiha for sparring for some reason, and Mizuki was responsible for grading everything he turned in. It seemed like a test was in order to see where each of them really was. Alright squirts, the name's Asuma Saratobi. I assume you all know each other, but I don't. Starting with you, Nara, explain why you became a ninja. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. I became a ninja to have a quiet life. It was either this or finding a job, and that's too much work. Asuma chuckled, hell of a career path for a quiet life. You're up next, Blondie. Naruto and Ino looked at each other, not sure who he was talking about. Ino decided to go first to get it over with. Bitter voice died in her throat. She had never thought about why she wanted to be a shinobi. She knew that her father might have influenced her, and she knew for a fact she didn't want to run a flower shop for the rest of her life, but was it just to get out of running the flower store? No, she was going to make her own way. She wanted more than running a shop and looking for a husband. That wouldn't be her life. I became a ninja to prove to myself that I'm strong and to make my own path in life. If that path included a raven-haired boy as a husband, even better. She looked down to hide her blush at the thought. Bad choice, now other blonde. I became a ninja to become Hokage and make everyone in the village acknowledge me. He yelled out proudly. This kid's gonna be a handful. He thought. Becoming Hokage is a lofty goal, but think about why. Now that that's out of the way, we are meeting tomorrow at 8 AM at Training Field 10. I've got to see if you all have the stuff to become ninja. Ino and Naruto had a shocked look on their faces. What do you mean, we passed the academy? We're already ninja. Ino pointed out. Asuma smiled. Not yet, you're not. I can send your asses right back to the academy if I want to, so don't be late and be ready. He disappeared in a swirl of leaves. He can't do that, can he? Naruto asked his teammates. Shikamaru stretched as he got up. I wouldn't doubt that he can, either way it's too early to know. See you tomorrow. Do y'all want to go get some ramen? I mean, we are teammates now, we might as well get to know each other some more. Naruto was hoping they would come. Like that's going to happen. I don't know what's worse, going back to the academy or being on a team with you two. And with that, Ino left the building enraged that Sakura got the better part of the deal. Shikamaru merely replied to Naruto with another see you tomorrow and went home. Naruto sighed, maybe they would warm up tomorrow. He made his way back to his apartment and showered and ate. He was going to sleep early because tomorrow would be a make or break day. No way could he go back to the academy, he had to pass and would do anything to make sure he would. Nervous, he drifted off to sleep wondering what the test could be. Chapter 5. Capture Asuma Sensei. Naruto, Ino, and a tired Shikamaru made their way to the training field for 8 AM. While they tried not to show it, they were all nervous. Getting sent back to the academy was a fate no one wished on their worst enemies. Shikamaru also didn't want to get an earful from his mother if he failed, so the lazy Nara was at least going to put some effort into today. From 3 different directions, the new teammates met and walked together without saying a word. They were too nervous to say anything, besides with Ino there, the boys didn't want to catch her ire. You're late. Asuma called out. The 3 looked around and saw their sensei sitting on a limb high up in a nearby tree. Naruto looked at his watch confused. Asuma sensei, we still have a minute until 8. Asuma glared at his new students. If you're not early, you're late. As representatives of your village, you need to be at least 30 minutes early for every mission. What image does showing up right before the mission convey? This lesson needed to be drilled in early, especially with how young they were. If you arrive early, you can make a plan and decide if any necessary changes need to happen. Also, if you forget something, it gives you some breathing room to check your equipment again. The kids nodded along and looked like they understood what he was saying. Taking a long puff, he decided to see what they were made of. Today you're all going to take one last test. If you fail, I send you packing back to the academy. Since you have 2 capture types, your test is capturing me by any means possible. Shikamaru studied his teacher as Naruto and Ino both exploded. You can't do that. You're a Jonin sensei, how are we supposed to capture you? Ino complained and Naruto nodded along with her assessment. Not my problem, good luck. Asuma said with a smirk and vanished in a puff of smoke. Ino threw her hands up, well that's it, I'm going to get sent back to the academy, with nincompoop and shit for brains I'm screwed. Naruto clenched his hands, he wasn't that bad, was he? Ino, we're teammates right now, could you not make fun of me for 2 seconds? Whatever Naruto, what do you have to say for yourself? Shikamaru. Ino asked with her hands on her hips. Shikamaru opened his eyes from his pose and thought of a response. When Ino was like this it was better to just go with it, but he also needed to get Naruto to follow a structured plan and sit still, the complete opposite of how he normally operated. "Shut up both of you, you're being too loud." Ino's anger rose, and before she could explode again she was stopped by Shikamaru holding his hand up. "The goal isn't to capture him, realistically we have no chance. So there's obviously some other objective to pass." It made no sense to try and win by brute force, a jonin wouldn't get caught by a group of graduates. He didn't know for sure yet, but he had an idea. Even if they had no chance they would try to see if he could get a better idea of what he really wanted. "Look, I have a plan that might work, but for it to have a chance we need to work together for a little while. We can go back to hating each other after, okay?" Ino and Naruto looked at each other for a minute until Naruto extended his hand. Ino stared at it until she broke and shook it. "Fine, only until we pass. Right now listen up." Scene break. Asuma leaned against a tree that had been his chair for the past half hour. It was odd, he had never had a group of graduates that didn't just rush him as soon as they could. Teamwork wasn't something you could really teach, it had to be learned amongst themselves, and the academy didn't do a good job of helping that along. If it was any other group he would have assumed that they gave up, but not Naruto. Naruto just wasn't the type to throw in the towel like other genin. Asuma felt eyes on him, but they didn't seem to be doing anything, so he took out another cigarette and went to light it. But as soon as both his hands were occupied Naruto jumped from his hiding spot with a shadow following closely behind. Asuma didn't even have to put down his cigarette as he jumped away, he knew if the shadow got him it would be trouble, he would probably be jumped with dozens of clones, so he made sure to keep his eye on the shadow. But as he jumped back on tree to tree he heard a sizzling noise. The branch he was on had a paper bomb kunai attached to it from Ino. He looked around and saw many of the trees nearby had paper bombs somewhere on their branches. He had to give them some credit, because of Naruto's clones he could attack without worrying about collateral damage, decent plan, but what if I changed the game? Asuma left the forest and went into the clearing, without tree coverage Shikamaru was at a disadvantage. He felt a burst of chakra meaning Naruto probably made more clones, he was too much of a one-trick pony already. Naruto and Ino entered the clearing flanking the jonin blocking off two escape routes. Asuma chose the middle of the clearing for a reason, the lack of shadows meant that Shikamaru's clan jutsu was near useless because he could easily outrun it. With the burst of chakra he felt earlier, Naruto had probably made clones stopping him from leaving the clearing, so they could keep sight of him. And with that Naruto and Ino rushed him choosing to engage him in melee. At least they are attacking together but that's not enough. Naruto threw a low kick as Ino went for a punch, expecting Asuma to jump over the kick. Asuma merely took the kick and dodged low making Ino miss. He punched Ino in the stomach while grabbing Naruto's foot and threw him to the ground. He thought that he broke them as they stopped moving on the ground, no way he knocked them outright. He breathed a sigh of relief as he realized that they were clones, wait clones. The Naruto and Ino on the ground considering the damage they took began to lose their features and turned back into two chunks of wood they were made from. Asuma looked around all alone, wondering why they would make an attack like that. His question was answered as nearly 20 clones from all around him jumped into the air, not attacking him just surrounding him, but 30 or so feet in the air. What the Asuma started as he saw a shadow creep toward him. "Not gonna reach me kid, I thought you knew your limits." He laughed out, but Shikamaru knew what he was doing. The distance to Asuma was too far for him alone, but with the clones Naruto made he could make it. His shadow jumped from shadow to shadow that the clones made being up in the air. The shadow possession jutsu was limited, but with all this fuel it could go longer and faster than before. "Shit, I didn't know they could do that," thought Asuma as he backpedaled away from the incoming shadow. Then from behind him he heard Ino mind transfer jutsu. Shit, if that hit he was done. He jumped into the air so she would miss and turned to face her, only she wasn't unconscious, she was smirking. She had faked him out by yelling out her jutsu, but not casting it. But Asuma now in the air Naruto and a legion of clones jumped towards him, now that he was airborne and couldn't jump away. The legion all grabbed Asuma and brought him down in a heap and they dogpiled to keep him down. "Got him?" Naruto shouted as he held onto his foot. He waited to be immobilized like the plan was, but that never came. Shikamaru was supposed to hit his group with his jutsu and catch Asuma sensei with him. He looked at the leg he had a hold of and realized it was just a branch. "Shikamaru, what the hell, we could have got him." Ino yelled out looking for the slacker. "No we couldn't, he was just playing with us." Shikamaru added, only he wasn't walking towards them, he was being carried, tied up, by Asuma. When he substituted, he grabbed him and tied him up like a pig. "Alright kiddies, take a seat and let's go over what happened." Asuma felt proud for a newly graduated rookie team. "You all did very well. The clones and the shadows were a great idea and Ino, nice job faking me out with faking your clan jutsu. Anyone less than a jonin probably would have gotten caught." With that the three genin sat up straighter, proud of their work. Unfortunately, you didn't catch me, so I can only do one thing. Shikamaru raised his hand. Yes, Shikamaru. Catching you wasn't the goal, right? It was for us to work as a team. No way you expected us to actually catch you, and the way you talked about how well we did makes me think that was the whole point, right? Of course, this kid had to inherit the Nara intellect, that means he failed his tests of purpose, gotta iron him out more it seems. Way to ruin the good news, Shikamaru. Yes, the goal was for you three to work together as a team. Even if one of you got lucky and caught me by yourself, you would all fail. Konoha Shinobi work as a unit, we work together as a team to achieve our mission. We don't leave each other behind or sacrifice others to succeed. From now on you three will train as a team, work as a team, and eat as a team. So, we pass right? Naruto asked. Asuma sighed and nodded. And with that they all celebrated in their own way. Ino and Naruto jumped and hollered, happy to not be going back to the academy, Ino stopping early and looking embarrassed. Shikamaru gave a small woo and laid down on his back to stare at the sky. Yay, congratulations you three, as of right now you are all officially ninja of the village hidden in the leaves. Let's get some food to celebrate, you all are probably hungry. Where do you want to eat? It's my treat. As a form of habit Naruto blurted out ramen. His mouth started to water, ramen was godly but free ramen, that was even better. Ramen it is, let's get going. Ino's stomach grumbled, she was starving, but she was on a diet. Sasuke wouldn't want a fat pig, she had to keep her figure. Maybe she would have a small bowl, as much as she hated to agree with Naruto, ramen sounded really good right now. Scene break, Naruto led them to his all-time favorite place, Ichiraku Ramen. Teki, the owner of the business, saw Naruto coming, so to be safe, he put on a few extra pots of water to boil. If it was like usual he would need it. Naruto, good to see you. Who are your friends here? Naruto usually only showed up by himself or with Iruka or the Hokage one time. The Hokage and Iruka, so it was weird seeing him with other people. Naruto picked up his speed. Hey Mr. Tucci, these are my newest teammates, Ino, Shikamaru, and our new sensei Asuma. He gestured to his teammates to take a seat at the bar. I wanted to show them the best ramen shop in the world as our first team meal. Naruto smiled, hoping he could share something he loved with his team. Tucci laughed, I should be paying you for the free advertising Naruto, I'm assuming the usual Naruto. He nodded. Good, now what can I get for you all? First bowls on the house for Naruto's new team. Asuma smiled, it seemed like Naruto had a few he could fall back on, even just a little bit. His father always hated how the village treated him, but in the end you can't change how people think. I guess I'll have what Naruto's having. Shikamaru said. Ino scoffed. Are you really too lazy to order your own food? Daichi laughed, you must have some appetite kid, do you think you can put down 20 bowls? Asuma audibly gulped, of course he had to offer to pay. If his usual order was this much, there went his date money this week. Thank God Ino and Shikamaru couldn't put down that much food, could they? Shikamaru looked at Naruto and paled. Actually, just give me one bowl of his usual. Ino looked at the menu, nothing was super healthy for her figure, but she needed something. Do you have anything less caloric on the menu? Gucci didn't bat an eye. Of course young lady, could you please help Ms. Ino for me please? His daughter was trying to get into the healthier side of ramen to attract more customers, and this young lady could be her test subject. He didn't want to eat any more of that healthy stuff, better her than him. As the team gave their orders and they waited on their food, Asuma decided to get this talk out of the way now. That reminds me, well I somewhat have your attention. Ino, I know you're on a diet, but that's going to stop once we get training. Ino paled, she knew she wasn't strong enough for Sasuke, yet so her figure was all she had. If she was fat and weak Sasuke wouldn't even look at her. But I can't, I have to. Asuma stopped her. I promise you're not going to get fat Ino. Once we begin in earnest you're going to be training and completing missions almost every single day. You need those calories to get stronger. Strong enough for a special somebody maybe. He planted the bait and from the look on her face she took it hook, line and sinker. Now Naruto, from what Mr. Tucci said you eat a lot of ramen right? It's the food of the gods Asuma sensei, of course I eat it a lot. He said like it was common knowledge. Asuma planted his face in his hands, this kid was going to kill him. The kid had probably been eating nothing but ramen for years and that wasn't exactly healthy. You Naruto are going to do the opposite of Ino. She ate too little, you eat too much. Starting tomorrow ramen is no longer your main food group. So enjoy this last hurrah because you're cleaning out your stash tonight. I want to see some vegetables in your diet that don't come in a ramen cup. Naruto looked like he was going to pass out. Life without ramen, was that a world worth living? He looked down at his first bowl, if this was the last time he ate it he was going to go all out. He was going to eat 50, number 60 bowls to get it out of his system. Old man keep him coming. And he got started working his way through his record. Finally, Shikamaru, I know you failed on purpose in the academy. You don't have to be like Naruto. Naruto fed because his mouth was full at the insult. But like today I want to see some effort in training and missions. Be lazy on your own time, but when you're with me I expect you to act like how smart you are, at least a little bit. Fine, deal. Shikamaru didn't bother arguing, it would have just been wasted effort. And if there was one thing Inara didn't do, it was waste energy needlessly. After a staggering number of bowls for the team they left Ichiroku's. Asuma looked at his wallet, the kids had cleaned him out, Naruto could rival the Akamichi appetite it seemed. I need to go report that you all passed, so take tomorrow off. Before I leave, do you have any questions for me? Naruto patted his comically large belly with a satisfied smile. Sensei, are we meeting tomorrow? I'm having some trouble with some training and need some tips. Sure, let's meet tomorrow in the same place and time we met today. And with that he headed off to report to his father about his team. Hopefully he wasn't the only person who passed their teams this year. If Kurenai passed, it would give them a lot more time together, not away on missions. The guy could hope, hopefully his bet about Kakashi would pay off. He needed cigarette money, badly. If this was a normal day with him, he needed some outlet. He needed to ask his dad what training Naruto was doing to see if he could help. Maybe he was cut out to be a sensei after all. Chapter 6. Field Training. After a quick talk with his father, Asuma headed out to meet his new team with a few seed packs in his pocket for Naruto's training. The faster Naruto learned how to effectively use the wood release, the better, but Naruto had his work cut out for him. Without learning either water or earth elemental transformation, isolating the wood release wasn't going to be easy. It was already going to be difficult, but add on that they hadn't been taught any chakra control yet, and it was going to be a bitch. It would help Naruto with control and give him a feel for how to grow things with his chakra. Getting it out of the way now was a good idea, but would take some time. The kid was either insanely lucky or a genius to be able to use the wood clone so quickly, and he was betting on the former. Once he managed to get this down, he would be able to use his clones better and learn new jutsu faster. He would need to master earth and water elemental transformations to be able to do some of the things Hashirama managed, but it was a good start. In the end, it seemed like throwing a kid who could barely swim in the deep end, but his father was sure the kid could pull it off. If he could learn how to make wood clones by himself in only a few hours, he would get this. Good morning, my student, what's the problem you're having? Naruto explained how the plant would either wither or explode. Asuma thought about it for a second. It sounds like you have made a little progress in that it doesn't die immediately, but it seems your control is off. When adding chakra, try to maintain a constant and consistent amount. If your control varies, it will affect the plant. Asuma quickly left the scene after giving his advice, and Naruto got back to work. He was determined to get this shit down today, because he couldn't afford any more mess-ups. Like he really couldn't afford to fail anymore, his wallet was empty, he was going to be living off the land until they completed some missions. He grabbed another seed and placed it in the palm of his hand like he had done every time before. He slowly pushed chakra into the seed and focused on keeping a constant flow. The seed sprouted, and it already felt massively different to what he had been doing before. The seed started slowly growing into a flower, but he kept his focus on making the flow the same as when he started. Sweat dripped down his face and into his eyes, and his hand started to cramp, but he persisted. Roots spread out on his hand, and the flower grew higher and higher. Suddenly the bulb at the top expanded and bloomed into a colorful flower. He immediately stopped the flow of chakra and slumped forward out of breath. He felt like he was going to vomit a little. They weren't taught anything like this in the academy. It was like holding up weights and doing math at the same time. What seemed like minutes had only been a few seconds. As he stared at his achievement, his eyes wandered to the other seed packs lying on the ground next to him. He had finally done it, but he still had a lot more to get through. He needed the practice, so one by one he worked his way through the seeds, and soon he had bushels of fresh flowers all around him. He fell on his back, exhausted but happy. He had seen his progress before his eyes today. What used to take minutes now only took seconds. He no longer messed up on the seeds and could confidently grow them no problem. It made him proud. It wasn't the great forests around Konoha Hashirama created, but it was a start. He took out one of the sandwiches he packed for lunch and dug in. His meals were looking a lot more bleak now that Asuma-sensei had cracked down on his diet. But it could be worse. For every third mission meal he could have it again. Every 3 missions Asuma would take them out for a team meal, and the rotation on what to eat would change. He couldn't wait to begin missions tomorrow. Would they infiltrate an enemy nation, or would they protect a VIP from an army of Rouge Ninja? He couldn't wait to find out. As he finished his meal, he noticed a girl was walking towards him. She had her hair tied in 2 buns on her head and had more kunai and shuriken than he had ever seen. She had probably come to train in the training field, but she looked oddly familiar. The girl walked up to him and gave him a questioning look. "You're Naruto, right?" "Yeah, I'm Naruto, don't I know you from somewhere?" "You look really familiar." He knew he had seen her somewhere before, but couldn't put his finger on where. "My name's Tenten, I was in your class a few years ago in the academy." "Good to see you remember me a little bit, I guess." "Congratulations on passing this year, by the way." Naruto beamed and rubbed the back of his head in a little bit of embarrassment. Thanks, I finally managed to get the clone jutsu down, kinda. So that's where I saw you. Tell me, what's being a ninja like? Got any tips? Who's on your team? He rattled out questions one and the other. Tenten grabbed his shoulders. Slowed down. One. She held up a finger. I don't want to spoil anything for you. And two, your first mission is a rite of passage and I don't want to ruin that by telling you something I shouldn't. I promise I can tell you everything after your first mission. Naruto crossed his arms. Fine. Why are you out here anyway? Are you here to train? I'm trying to. I use lots of throwing weapons and I'm always trying to get better, but I've hit a wall. She took out a handful of kunai and tossed them at a nearby tree. They all embedded themselves at once, forming the shape of a star. Naruto's jaw dropped. He could throw a kunai, but not that many at once and with that accuracy. You're amazing. I'd hate to be that tree right now. Tenten hid the small bush creeping up her cheeks. Thanks, but I've barely had any real practice against a moving target that wasn't a dummy. My team just got back from a mission and I need to work on my throwing, so I'm not a burden. With Niji the genius and Lee the taijutsu genius, she felt she was the weak link of the team. Naruto heard her say burden and he could relate. Ino did a very good job so far of reminding him he barely passed the academy and he would have killed for people to train with all those years. You know, I could help you train, no problem. Tenten raised her eyebrows. You do know these are real ninja weapons, right? They aren't blunted down and I would really rather not killing a new genin before his first mission. She appreciated his offer, but it was a bad idea. No, it's no problem, I can just make a bunch of clones. How many do you need? Okay, now she knew he was screwing with her. No one bar the Hokage could make more than a few clones at one time. She was going to call his bluff. Give me as many as you can make. Naruto went ahead and got up from the ground and snapped his hands into the snake seal. He hadn't attempted to make a large amount of clones since that day, so this would be decent practice at least. Activating the jutsu once again, it still felt weird. As the number of clones grew, his training partner's eye grew wide. Just what in the hell was she seeing? This kid was on another level just like Lee. As she gazed out on the sea of clones in front of her, she didn't know what to think, let alone say. You're the new wood releases user. She exclaimed. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked. So how are we going to do this? Do you want them to come at you one at a time or just try and dodge? You mean to tell me you made this many clones just so I could train throwing weapons on them? She asked, dumbfounded. Naruto was getting a little confused. How else? I wasn't gonna let you throw everything you had on you just at me. He rapped his knuckles against one of his identical clones, making a knocking on wood sound. Ow, the Naruto clone replied. Sorry buddy, but these guys can take a beating, so have at it. A few grumbled were heard in the crowd at his sacrifice of them. The real Naruto made sure to step back behind some cover in case her skills were rusty. No need to get hit for no reason. Tenten finally knocked herself out of her stupor and looked at her bag and then back to the crowd. She was going to have fun. Before they could react, several clones fell to the ground looking like a pincushion. The group attempted to dodge, but her aim was impeccable. Some fell to overwhelming force and others fell to pinpoint accurate shots to their limbs. The body count slowly rose and it only got worse. Scrolls flew out of her bags and hundreds, no, thousands of kunai and shuriken were expelled at them. Undeterred, the remnants of the clones rushed Tenten, hoping to put her on the back foot and slow down their slaughter. In response, Tenten was able to practice the move she was developing to put even her teammates under stress and jumped high in the air and two large scrolls unfurling as they spun. Through a large puff of summoning smoke, it began to rain death. In every direction the throwing weapons were launched, not focusing on accuracy anymore, but sheer numbers. Naruto, who was watching from relative safety at that point, had his hair slightly cut as he peeked from his cover and a few managed to get close. He decided to bunker down until she was done and nursed a small headache from where it felt like the kunai might have grazed him. Soon enough the sound of silence came again. It became eerily quiet, so he yelled out just in case. You done out there? Not getting a response, he peeked out of cover again and saw Tenten walking at him quickly with a scroll in her hand. Oh crap, she thought he was a clone. He was in trouble. Before he could speak, she engulfed him in a tight hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was the best training I've ever gotten. I've been wanting to test out that move for weeks now, but it was too dangerous to ask my teammates. She realized she was hugging a boy she had only talked to this one time and quickly let go of the embrace. They both had blush creeping up their faces realizing what happened. Yay, no problem. Naruto stammered out. Looking around, he saw what could only be described as a war zone. Kunai and shuriken littered almost every single spot on the ground and the trees around them were covered on their exposed side. His headache forgotten, he quickly changed the subject. Do you want some help picking everything up? She turned away from him to hide her face. That sounds great. Let's get started. She grabbed her scrolls and began laying them out. Naruto walked a bit away and went ahead and created a few clones to handle the cleanup to their dismay. While they worked, Naruto thought about what had just happened. He hadn't been hugged in a long time and it felt really good. But he barely knew the girl, and even though he knew he couldn't ask her for a hug again, he would rather curl up into a ball than ask that. So, the rest of the cleanup was handled in silence, and thanks to the clones was over quickly. Tenten finally finished sealing all her weapons and realized she was going to be late. Naruto, I can't thank you enough for today. I've never been able to train like that before and I really appreciate it. I owe you one big time. You're welcome, Tenten, it's no problem. I think we were both able to train a good bit, so we're even. I'm not going to accept no as an answer, Naruto, I owe you a favor. Just as long as it isn't ridiculous, I'll pay up. Naruto could see she wasn't going to budge. Fine, you owe me and my team a meal, how about that? She smiled. Deal, I've got to go meet my team, but thanks again for today. Maybe we can do it again sometime. She started to walk away but turned around, walking backwards. Good luck on your first mission. She yelled out. And then she was gone. Naruto had to laugh a bit, that was his first interaction with a girl that didn't either look disgusted at him or hit him. He gathered the remnants of his training and had armfuls of brightly shining flowers. What the hell was he going to do with all these? Maybe Ino would buy them back and he could save a little money. It was worth a shot. Naruto gathered the flowers off the ground and realized how many he had. He could barely see where he was going, and his arms were completely full as he made his way back into Konoha. Scene break. Naruto walked into Yamanaka Flowers with his armful of flowers, only Ino wasn't at the counter today. There was an older woman behind the counter. Hello, welcome to Yamanaka Flowers, how can I help you? She looked at the young man with all the flowers. Usually, people walked out of a flower shop with flowers, not in. Hello ma'am, is Ino here? That depends on who you might be. It looked like her daughter had a would-be suitor with how many flowers he had brought for her daughter. He was only destined for heartbreak, she was afraid. Ino had only one boy on her mind these days. Though she had to be honest, that many flowers were a good start. I'm Naruto, Ino's new teammate. Ah, so you're one of the boys my Ino talked about. She mentioned she was on the team with the newest Senju. It's good to meet you, Naruto. So what are you doing with all those flowers? It was good to meet her daughter's teammate before she was alone with him for weeks at a time. It was also a treat to meet the carrier of the wood style her husband had been talking about. These are a result of my training this morning, and I don't really have a use for them. I was coming to see if you or Ino could use or sell them. I couldn't take them for nothing, Naruto, here let me pay you for them. She didn't want to rip off such a nice kid. They were beautiful, bloomed flowers that were months out of season for this time of year, as such, they were in high demand. She was amazed that he could grow them, even professionals like her that did this for a living could struggle with some flowers. Naruto, not knowing this, felt like he was ripping her off. He had gotten these for free, so it didn't feel right taking so much money for them. A light bulb went off, maybe he could get more seeds so he could train more. Money was good and he was low right now, but without ramen in the budget, his daily costs just today were down a lot. Could I just get some more seeds? I used them all this morning training. She stumbled, either this kid was an idiot, she didn't think this was the case, or he was a giving person. She knew he wouldn't take money for this, so she gave in. Here dear, take as many as you want. Handing him a whole tray of seed packets. As Naruto thanked her and began to stuff his pockets with them, he heard a familiar voice. What are you doing here, Naruto? I hope you're not gonna make another mess. Ino had walked in. Her day off was filled with stocking shelves, so needless to say, she wasn't in a very good mood. Especially after the incident the other day, she didn't want him back in the store. Ino's mom smirked. Naruto was here to deliver these flowers to you, it seems like you have a new crush, dear. She silently laughed, she would stop it if her daughter took it too far, but it was her job to embarrass her. Ino looked at the flowers which she knew cost a fortune right now and then back at Naruto, her eyes full of rage. Naruto. She started to move towards him, ready to knock him out. Naruto looked at her and then to Ino, full of panic. Oh god, I'm gonna die, he thought as Ino got closer. He would later swear he saw a bowl of ramen with wings coming for him in that moment. Just kidding, she laughed, he's just here to drop them off, Ino dear. Don't worry, they aren't for you. Ino calmed down, still staring Naruto down just in case. He apparently grew them this morning and thought that we would have some use for them. That's impossible, you can't grow these at this time of year. They won't bloom. Ino stated, she didn't grow up around flowers for no reason. Apparently it's a part of his new training he's doing, right Naruto? He nodded, still taking deep breaths. Ino realized, is this what you were trying to do last time you were here? It seemed he didn't have the exploding problem anymore, thank god. Her mom smirked, last time huh? Tell me more, Ino dear. Ino realized she was caught, now her mom was going to pester her all day for the story. As mom and daughter interacted, Naruto made his escape, he had gotten what he came here for, no need to be interrogated like Ino was. He ran out the door, parting with see you tomorrow, Ino. And with that he was gone, leaving Ino high and dry. I'm going to kill him, I swear I'm going to kill him, she thought. 12 more hours, and then he's dead, counting down the time until she saw him again. Chapter 7. A new home. It was a day with a clear blue sky that Team 10 met for their first official act as a team of genin. The members Ino, Naruto, and Shikamaru had come an extra 30 minutes early so they wouldn't get yelled at by Asuma again, though Shikamaru had cut it a little close and was making sure to complain the whole time. Usually, genin teams start off with D-rank missions to get them used to working together and get to know each other. Asuma disagreed with that logic, he wanted to see what state his new team was in right out of the academy. While the risk of danger on D missions were almost non-existent, it made him feel better to know they could defend themselves. Since the last great ninja war standards had slipped a bit. It happened in every village, to recoup losses the standards would drop for some time while the village licked its wounds. But since the fourth Hokage died, his father had to distribute power to his advisors just to keep his head above the workload. It wasn't fully his fault, he was old and had already retired, but the problem was still there. And so, even though genin graduated from the academy, they were sorely unprepared for a real fight, and while rare, teams of genin died every year. Anything could happen, and so Asuma wanted to make sure his newest students would be ready. Alright Team 10, we're going to have another test today. His genin groaned. The better you do the quicker we can begin missions. And gotcha, now at least 2 of his genin were going to try now that they were sufficiently motivated. The other one was well, he was a Nara, not much motivated Nara. What's the test, Asuma sensei? Naruto was ready for anything, at least he thought he was. Just some simple fighting and weapon throwing tests. I need to see where we are starting at, so I know what to train you on. H knew that with their family jutsu, Ino and Shikamaru were going to be crap at hand-to-hand because they didn't see it as important. Naruto, on the other hand, was good in a scrap but had little to no range to his attacks, and he knew almost no jutsu. Asuma was going to have to find someone to help his earth and water chakra jutsu because those were his worst. And with that they got started, they spared one-on-one with each other and their sensei, as well as using throwing weapons. For jutsu, Asuma had them use every single on that they knew back to back. Ino could use her family mind transfer technique at the moment, but she only knew the most basic as she was just too young for the more dangerous and taxing techniques. Thanks to this though, Ino was a fantastic scouter and spy, being able to use birds and animals for information. But like he thought she was behind in hand-to-hand combat. That would have to change, being a Ling range fighter already if she got caught out or the enemy closed the distance she needed to be able to hold her own. Shikamaru was already turning into a pain in his ass, he couldn't tell if he was just bad at something or just not giving a shit. His family jutsu was an amazing capture technique that had close and long range capability and was silent. The drawback, he couldn't move while he used it and it had a limited range depending on the environment. His hand-to-hand was decent but nothing special. He mostly relied on his mind and using his jutsu in unique ways, but that wouldn't work every time. Naruto was a special case, but had massively glaring problems that thank God were easy fixes. A close combat brawler was his style, and as such he was the only one able to stand his ground in a fist fight. While not a strategic genius like Shikamaru, he thrived in the middle of a fight and was a creative fighter using the environment to help him. Asuma rubbed his shoulder, who couldn't have predicted that he would launch himself at him using his own clones. He could only hit about 2/3 of the weapons he threw and knew next to zero jutsu. His clones being the obvious exception, but in a primarily mid to long range team, he would rush in putting himself and his teammates in danger. While it was going to suck for them, he was going to turn them into the most competent genin as a group before they were going to take any mission. A little sparing and a lot of hard work would turn them into this year's strongest team. And so he got to work. Ino would spar with Naruto's wood clones as they made great punching bags that hit back. Shikamaru would work on capturing himself and chakra saving techniques, and Naruto would learn how to reliably hit a kunai. He would have liked to have taught him a jutsu for some flexibility, but it would take too long and he had more pressing issues. After an exhaustingly long day, a bruised and battered group of genin walked away from the training field. Ino was sporting black and blue bruises all over herself after punching and getting punched by essentially a tree. She nursed her wound as she was the most beat up of the bunch. Shikamaru was being carried by Naruto as he used up all of the chakra he had, at least that was his excuse to Naruto. Naruto could barely use either of his arms from throwing kunai and shuriken all day. The good news, Asuma said they might be able to go on missions soon. The bad news was that they felt like the Walking Dead. Meals that night were eaten in silence, and all 3 collapsed in their beds as soon as they could to sleep off such a rough day. Asuma was proud of his group of genin. They might have complained and bitched the whole time, but none of them stopped and gave up like some teams he was already hearing about. It was a small step in their progress of their career, but a dramatic change he thought from the morning. They wouldn't change overnight, but it was the effort that mattered. Honestly, they were ready to start D-rank missions, and he for one couldn't wait. It was time for them to learn what being a ninja was all about. Scene break. 2 weeks later, Team 10 were enjoying the life of a genin, raking crap and plowing a field for a farmer who had busted his leg. It really didn't get any better after the first few days. Naruto hoped that walking dogs their first mission was fluke, a coincidence maybe. But no, that's the type of things that they did now for a living. The past 3 weeks of their lives were mixed with dog walking, delivering packages, and the occasional manual labor for someone who was hurt. Asuma sensei, please, let me use them. I can't take it anymore and I need to meet with the old man this afternoon now. Naruto rubbed his head. Have some respect for the Hokage, Naruto. Ino couldn't believe he called the Hokage that and was still walking. Asuma stomped out another cigarette. No, Naruto, it would defeat the whole purpose of these missions to cheat like that. Naruto had been banned from using his clones to help speed up the missions. Not every mission, just these miserable D ranks. I don't see how this builds teamwork, sensei. If only Asuma would lift that stupid rule, they could get missions done so much faster. Flashback. At ready you three, this is our first mission, so I want each of you to give it your all. Got it. With 2 yeses and 1 sure they walked into the office of the Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. Team 10 reporting for mission briefing. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen smiled. Naruto was finally here, ready to start missions. He looked at the list of available missions and smirked. He had taken a bet with his son on how each member of the team would react to the missions they were cleared to do and was ready to make some money. He had known Naruto long enough to know what was going to happen. He had grown up a lot since he found out he was a Senju, no longer pulling pranks or using the sexy jutsu in front of people. But he was still Naruto, nothing could change that. Good, you came on a good day, you have your choice of missions today. Let us see, you have a choice of cleaning out a recently evicted house, finding a lost cat, or planting a garden. And as promised, the look on their faces were priceless. A mix between shock and disappointment. He did love this tradition, the first mission was always given by the Hokage. That can't be it, right? Unlike Ino and Shikamaru, who were both cowed and starstruck to be in front of the Hokage for the first time, Naruto had been there before, so he spoke up. Ino's mouth dropped, he just questioned the Hokage. Asuma decided to save him and explain his place. This is it, Naruto, as a fresh genin team, these are the missions you do. Once you do enough of them we can do C-rank missions. Damn it, Naruto had just lost him some serious money. He didn't think he was that close to his father and would question him like that. Let's get going you three, we'll take the garden job, Hokage-sama. Scene break. Alright you three, our job is to dig up the dead plants, spread fertilizer, and replant new ones. Get started. Grumbling, the 3 genin got to work in the garden. As Naruto put his hands elbow deep into the fertilizer, a plan formed in his head. This was just like chores, he threw his hands into the snake seal and was just about to create a few clones to make life easier, he was knocked down face first into the poop. Pte plea all gross, he had a mouthful of the stuff and he couldn't see. He could hear Ino and Shikamaru laughing their asses off at him as he spit to clear his mouth. He took both hands and wiped the crap off his eyes so he could see. He of course saw his so-called teammates laughing at his misery, as well as Asuma standing over him arms crossed. What the hell was that for? He looked down and he was covered. That's cheating, Naruto, from now on you are not to use your clones on D-rank missions. Got it. As much as he himself hated wasting time on D-ranks, they were needed. While they admittedly sucked, it got the genin more comfortable around each other. Trust was the key component for a team to function, especially in life-threatening situations. If you couldn't trust your teammate to have your back, what did you have? Naruto grumbled as he stopped the futile process of trying to get clean and continued to spread the crap on the ground instead of on himself. That's a good look on you, Naruto. Ino said with a laugh. Naruto stopped the futile attempt to clean himself and went back to spreading it on the ground instead of on himself. Shut up, Ino. Needless to say, Ino did not in fact shut up, and for such a crap mission, she was having a great time. After a miserable mission of planting flowers which Ino did enjoy. The team collected their pay for the day as Asuma addressed them. How did you three enjoy your first mission as ninja? Smirking, already knowing the answer. Shikamaru answered, is manual labor the majority of what we are going to do? Because if so, being a ninja is too much trouble. Naruto chimed in, come on Shikamaru, we only have to deal with D ranks until we hit the threshold, right Asuma sensei? He received a nod. Once we reach that we don't have to deal with them anymore. At least that's what he hoped, he didn't know how many more of these that he could deal with. Scene break, end of flashback. Hiruzen shook his head, what was the point of telling him it was important if he was going to show up late? Well, in the end it wouldn't really matter, it made it harder than it had to be. Dealing with his advisors and the council was beginning to wear on him. Well, they used to be his friends ever since Naruto came into the equation, he could barely recognize them. After they learned of the Kyuubi, they had petitioned to kill Naruto to attempt to kill the beast inside him. He quickly struck them down, but their treatment of the boy was deplorable. When he expressed his want to join the academy, they tried to block him and bar him from any school, saying he was too dangerous to be around children. And now they had grown so bold as to demand today's meeting. While he would love to send them packing once again, today was out of his hands. Several clan heads also expressed a desire for the council to convene. Clan matters were considered separate from the Hokage's reign of influence and had been since the foundation of the village. The clans were able to retain a large amount of autonomy in personal matters and clan business. Though the timing of the council meant they most likely would be deciding on if Naruto's claim on the Senju name was valid. Their decision wouldn't change the fact that Naruto could use the Mokuton. It would bar him from taking up the name Senju. He honestly doubted the vote would swing against Naruto, it just showed the length some of the council would go to deny the boy anything. Before he could think any more on the subject, Naruto burst through the door panting. It had seemed here from wherever he was. "I'm Huffier." He was leaning forward with his hands on his knees trying to catch his breath. "My bad, Gigi, had to get cleaned up before I came here." "That's fine, Naruto, have a seat, we need to have a talk before you meet with the council." Naruto took a seat in his usual chair. "Today the council that helps to govern Konoha has called this meeting to decide whether or not you can use and claim the Senju name. I would ask you to try and keep your temper and remain respectful." Naruto nodded and followed the Hokage to meet with the council. Scene break. Finally, he decides to show up. Naruto and Hiruzen entered the council's chambers. It was a large meeting room with a seat set up in a semicircle facing the door. Each seat was filled with someone of importance to the village. All the major clans of the village held a seat for the head of the clan to deal with clan disputes and help advise the Hokage on shinobi matters. Every clan head was present except for the Senju and Uchiha, as they had no clan head. The civilians of the village also held a place on the council, albeit a smaller number of seats. They oversaw running the commercial side of the village and other tasks vital to running a village. The Hokage's advisors also held their own seats, as well as Danzo, a significant leader of a portion of the Leaf's military strength. All were assembled to discuss Naruto, and now that he was officially a ninja, Hiruzen couldn't fully control his fate. Yes, he is, his mission seemed to run a bit over schedule. Now that we are here, this council can begin. He took his seat at the center of the room at the middle of the table. Amura, one of Hiruzen's old teammates turned advisor, began. "Very well, we have called this council in order to discuss and decide on Naruto Uzumaki's right to call himself a Senju, as well as what will happen to what's left of the Senju property." Shibuya chimed in. "Why is the Senju property being brought up? It bears no relevance in Naruto's case." The shinobi clan heads nodded in agreement. Those not in clans bringing up clan issues was worrying. "It is important because if it is decided that Naruto doesn't bear the Senju blood, then something needs to be done. Tsunade hasn't been seen in years, at this point she should be declared dead or at the very least rogue. With that the clan would be extinct and property can be used for the betterment of the village. There is a simple way to know if he bears Hashirama's blood." Danzo calmly spoke, all heads turned to the man. "Have him attempt to enter the Senju compound, that would erase any doubt to his claim." An unsteady feeling shifted throughout the room. The Senju compound was, like he said, a good test, but it was a dangerous one. The Senju compound was a small group of households surrounded by plant life. For any other place it would be beautiful, but the Senju compound was deadly. Hashirama himself created much of the gardens and tree life, and to a certain extent they seemed sentient. Ever since Tsunade left, the place was a death trap to enter. Every year traders and other villages' elite ninja would attempt to enter the compound to steal its secrets, and every year they would never come out. No one not of Senju blood could enter, and that's what made it a perfect test, much to Hiruzen's discomfort. It was an all-or-nothing test, and there would be no takebacks once it was done. Naruto had heard the stories about the legendary home of the first Hokage. Hell, some kids years ago tried to dare him to try and get in the place. He knew it was dangerous, but it would erase any doubt about him. "I'll do it." Every head snapped to Naruto, who was standing confident in his choice. "Very well, let us head that way." The gates of the Senju compound were slightly intimidating to say the least. Made out of thick beams of wood stronger than steel, it was a sight to behold. The nearby plant life had begun to grow over it, and the trees on each side seemed to lean closer, as if trying to protect it. Vinces and thorns wrapped around the beams like snakes ready to strike. And now Naruto was standing right in front of it, a little more than nervous. "This can't be too hard, right? I mean, I can use the wood style, I'm going to be fine, right?" Naruto began to slowly make his way closer to the entrance, feeling worse and worse as he took every step. Every step closer he took, the trees seemed to block out more of the sun and move closer to him. The vines seemed to point towards him, and the thorns grew longer and jagged. From his point of view it was terrifying, but from the safe distance the council was watching there was a sense of dread as they watched the trees bend themselves towards the approaching boy. There had been stories that the trees would rip intruders apart and the thorns would tear them to shred, but now it was clear that it was all true. Naruto slowly stretched out his hand to touch the gate and had to swipe his hand back as a vine snapped at him like a snake. The air was suffocating and he could barely swallow, and his mouth was dry, but he knew it was too late to turn back. He surged forward and pushed the gate with both of his arms, keeping his eyes shut, waiting to get attacked. But as the seconds ticked by, nothing happened. He peeked with his left eye and nothing was moving, the plants frozen in the air from the second he managed to touch the gate. Just as quickly as they seemed to grow towards him, the vines and thorns retracted and untwined themselves from the gate. The trees shifted back upright as if they were just swaying in the breeze. He took it as a good sign and pushed hard, and the gate groaned in protest. Giving it a little more oomph, and the gate gave way, opening to show a decently large courtyard and a few houses. The audience let out the breath they were holding, many thinking they were about to see a child get ripped apart, and Hiruzen breathed out deeply and greedily sucked in a new breath. He had almost ran forward and grabbed Naruto before he could get too close to save his grandson. As the council proceeded to get its bearings, Naruto was already heading inside and checking the place out. Danzo was pleasantly surprised at this turn of events. His agent had never been able to enter the compound before because somehow the plants could tell he wasn't a true Senju. But now, this opened up many possibilities. The single scroll he had taken so long ago seemed like a pittance compared to what Naruto had access to, and even better, had the ability to use to its full extent. He was right not to act aggressive to the child, it would take time, but that's something he had learned in the years, patience. A pleasant smile was plastered on his face as he made his way back to the route to think on this more. The shinobi on the council stayed clear of the entrance, still very much wary of the danger they knew was present, while some of the others began to walk towards the gate, eager to get a glimpse of the inside. Before they could get within arm's reach of the entrance, the plant life raised up threateningly, causing many to jump or run back behind the clan heads for safety. Naruto was looking at the gardens and turned around and realized that no one was following him. He jogged back to the entrance and saw that they were keeping a good distance from the admittingly killer plants. He quickly walked through the gate. "Come on, Gigi, you gotta see this," he said excitedly. Hiruzen admittingly had to steel his courage as he kept a calm face and walked towards the gate. Ready to jump away at a moment's notice, he crossed the threshold and realized nothing had happened. Breathing a sigh of relief, he once again gazed upon the Senju compound. He could feel tears building in his eyes as he stared at the place he hadn't seen for so long. Aburama would have him meet here to begin their days of training all those years ago. He could see images of Tsunade waddling around as an infant on these very grounds and clearly remember when she was old enough to enter the academy. "Thank you, Naruto, for letting this old man relive his past. Now I believe you have a compound to explore and most likely clean. If you need me, I will be in my office." And with that, he walked out of the compound and headed towards his office. All the while the council tried to get a response out of him about what he had seen and what this meant. He didn't answer any of them, let them figure it out on their own. He needed to draft a letter to a former student and hope it would find her. Scene break. Naruto looked around again and couldn't believe what he was seeing. This place was freaking awesome. It was decided he was moving in here as soon as possible. The inside of the houses was disgusting, but once it was cleaned up it would be great. No more of that crappy apartment, goodbye mattress with a hole in it. Goodbye rent. Going through the rooms, there was tons of stuff, a weapons room, a big-ass library, and the biggest and comfiest looking bed he had ever seen, and it was his. The best part, honestly, was the security. It was clear that he wouldn't have to deal with graffiti or broken windows ever again. He sneezed again, he really was going to need to clean before he moved in, the dust was inches thick in some places. Cleaning was his bane, but with clones it was going to be a piece of cake. He just needed to buy some supplies, but that could wait. It was getting late and he had more missions tomorrow. Going back to his apartment was depressing, but hopefully this would be one of, if not, the last night he would spend in this place. Chapter 8. Finally, a C rank. After another boring D rank missions, Naruto felt like he was about to explode. This was getting ridiculous, walking dogs and catching lost pets was grating on his nerves, and not being able to use his clones made every mission so much longer. He was wasting valuable training time doing this crap. Besides training, he still needed to make his new home livable, and that was going to be a task. Thank God for clones, thought Naruto, or he would never get everything done in time. First things first, he needed cleaning supplies. From all the D missions they had been doing, he had a little bit saved up, and without paying for his apartment, that would open up a big chunk of his budget open. He didn't plan to pay for next month, so he had a lot to use. After a quick shopping trip which he knew he was being overcharged for, he went back to his new home. He made a few clones to deal with the cleaning. He hoped his clones couldn't hold grudges because he was working them to the bone, or really to the branches. He snickered at his own joke and he went to the training field. On his way there he felt like he was punched in the gut. He looked around and there wasn't anybody there. He heard a groan and looked down. There was the cause of his pain, a small kid must have run into him for some reason. He picked the kid up and dusted him off. "You okay, kid?" The kid looked up at the wall he had just run into and his eyes focused on the forehead protector. "You," pointing at Naruto, "you're a ninja, right? A perfect subject to test my skills on. Eat this." A slow punch came towards Naruto. "Is this it?" Naruto thought as he grabbed the kid's arm and bonked him on the head. "Don't punch random people, squirt." Still holding one of the kid's arms as the kid rubbed his head in pain. He looked at the ninja who had just beat him up. You just hit me." Looking dumbly at Naruto as if that wasn't even an option. Just then another person ran around the corner. "Honorable grandson, there you are. What are you doing with the honorable grandson?" The Jonin had been tasked to teach him to become a ninja like he wanted, but he just kept running away. Konohamaru grinned. When people learned who he was always apologized to. It was going to be sweet to see the ninja who hit him beg him not to tell his grandpa. "Unhand the honorable grandson now." Naruto barked out a laugh. "I don't care if this kid's the king of the world, don't punch people." And with that gave him another bonk on his head and let go of the kid's arm. Konohamaru had never met someone this strong and it didn't seem like he cared who he was. That settled it, he was going to be his sensei no matter what. All he needed to do was ditch the guy with glasses again and he would learn to be a ninja to become Hokage. Scene break. Naruto settled down in the training field to work on his training a bit more. He had it down already, but until that guy came around again it was the best he could do. He had taken the initiative to grab some fruit and vegetable seed to see if it worked the same and to his surprise, it worked even better. He was now the proud owner of a big-ass watermelon. His stomach rumbled a little bit and like a lightning strike his brain went into overload. He could grow whatever he wanted. "I have unlimited food." He devoured the watermelon and rubbed his belly. If only ramen grew from seeds, that would be the life. "You know, you've only been using the wood style for a few weeks and you managed to come up with this. Pretty impressive, Naruto." Naruto spun around and saw Yamato looking down at the remains of his impromptu snack. "Even I didn't think about using it like that and trust me, it would have come in handy a time or two." "Why are you here today, Yamato? Are you going to teach me a new jutsu? Please, please, please." He jumped up and begged him. "I'm here to watch over you and see your progress. Don't forget you're working with a dangerous and mostly forgotten style. Not to mention the tailed beast and how the Mokuton reacted with the beast. It was used to capture the Kyuubi long ago and if it could hold a grudge it undoubtedly would." He had planned to see how far along he had gotten and to his surprise, he was much farther along than he expected. He would have thought it would take much longer to be able to grow seeds that fast, let alone be able to grow fruits. It seemed it was time to begin the next step of training. "You've grown, Naruto, and I think you're ready for your first or second official wood-style jutsu." "Really? Is it a bad SS rank or an SS rank? I can learn it, believe it." Finally, a new jutsu, he couldn't wait to see the damage it could do if it was a Mokuton jutsu. Yamato sighed, he pitied Naruto's sensei if this was what he acted like all the time. "Calm down, Naruto, what I'm going to teach you isn't an S rank, in fact it's probably a D rank on its usefulness in a fight. But it is more valuable than anything else I could teach you as a whole. This will teach you how to grow chakra-infused wood no matter where you are. It could save you life one day, now watch closely." Wood style. 4 pillars house jutsu. He went through the seals slow enough for Naruto to see and slammed his palms to the ground. The ground began to lightly rumble and split apart. Naruto tried to get his balance as pillars of wood shot up from the ground and began to grow outwards. The growths connected the pillars and began to change shape with curves and corners. When it was all said and done, a small wooden house was standing before them, decked out with windows, doors and even a small birdhouse attached. Yamato looked to his student, wiping a bead of sweat of his forehead. "This jutsu will allow you to have a roof over your head no matter where you go, notice the details. The more you practice, get better with shaping the wood you grow, the more details you can add and make it more lavish. Go ahead and give it a try." Naruto looked at his teacher and narrowed his eyes. This proved he could also use the Mokuton and only made even more questions. But he knew he wasn't going to get any answers, at least not yet. Looking back at the small house, he had to admit it would be really useful to learn. When he was younger and spent a lot of his time in the woods, it would have been nice to know, especially when it rained. The house wherever he went would be cool and he couldn't wait until he and his team were out on missions and they were sleeping on the ground while he was living in luxury. Naruto went through the signs and slammed his hands down, the ground rumbled and 4 beams shot up and made a perfectly lavish house to occupy. At least that is what should have happened. In reality, a little more than 4 sticks rose from the ground and were connected to each other by little more than twigs. The damn thing looked like it was going to fall over already. He could hear Yamato laughing behind his back and his face turned tomato red. "Why the hell does mine suck?" Yamato wiped a tear from his eyes, he didn't expect it to be this bad. He should call it the stick style instead of the wood style if that's what he was bringing to the table. "The more you practice the better it will be. As I said earlier, you've only been using it for a few weeks and never really learned how to truly shape your creations yet. This was the first step in learning how to shape his creations and making large amount of wood from nothing. The clone jutsu he managed to brute for it, but this kind of jutsu would take time and practice to get proficient at. Yamato himself couldn't use many of the greater Mokuton jutsu, but Naruto would with time, and this was necessary to learn before he attempted a actually dangerous jutsu. Keep practicing, Naruto. When you can make a house I could live in, I can give you the next step. Scene break. Sasuke couldn't believe it, these kind of missions were a waste of time and his sensei was grating on his nerves. Becoming a delivery boy was beneath him and wouldn't help in his plan to grow stronger. Kakashi arrived hours late to every training session and missions was just the cherry on top of it. As he and his team sat waiting again for Kakashi to arrive, he swore he was going to break at some point. Do you guys think Kakashi will ever be on time? Kiba asked, laying on the ground with Akamaru sleeping on his stomach. He was also getting tired of D ranks and Kakashi wasting his time. Kakashi had finally agreed to give them a C rank whenever he found one that would work for them, and now it was just a waiting game. Thank God he had Akamaru or he would have gone insane weeks ago. Be better at this, girl. Kiba will go crazy. Sakura complained. Kakashi watched his team from a building far into Konoha. He was having second thoughts about passing them, but they had done what they should have, so he couldn't fail them, even if he was regretting it a bit now. He had 2 heavy hitters and 1 support in his team, and that was good, but they still were struggling to get along and function as a team. Sakura was struggling to bloom as a ninja and was far behind her teammates in skill and ability. The fact she didn't seem interested in training on her own was an issue, but she would learn soon enough. Sasuke and Kiba's jutsu didn't match well, and they hit each other more than they hit the target. But today they would have a real chance to prove themselves as they were providing support on a C rank with Team 10. Hopefully this would be the catalyst for his team to click together, as the D ranks they were doing only made them hate each other more. He hated to admit it, but his team was probably the worst of the Genin teams this year. Kurenai had already created a team out of her Genin, and they worked well together. She was already bragging that they managed to create a team combo jutsu already. Asuma had worked his team enough that they alone were strong enough to take care of themselves and could work his team well enough. Today they were going to be support for Team 10 on their C rank and it should light a fire under his team's asses. It would also help that they could directly compare themselves to another team and they would drive each other to compete and work harder. He was already planning to have them all train chakra control and he was already smiling at the thought. Hakushi waved as he walked towards his team, hopefully they aren't too mad at me Dodi, but at least I have something to cheer them up. A few hours ago with Team 10, Asuma looked at his team who were jumping with joy, he was finally happy with their progress enough and was ready to let them try a C rank mission. After calming Naruto down, he brought his team before the Hokage for the mission's debriefing. Hiruzen for one was happy he finally had an excuse to get rid of the drunk who had been badgering him for days. It would be an easy C rank missions to get the genin used to being out of the village and working with clients. The old man seemed off in some way, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Asuma would be able to take care of it if need be. Good morning Team 10, you have been cleared to accept C rank missions by your sensei. Naruto pumped his fist. Your mission is to escort a builder back to the land of waves and protect him from bandits until he finishes his project. Once the mission is done, collect the rest of the payment and return. Bring him in please. He called out to his secretary and the door opened and an old man walked through the door. Azuna, the famous bridge builder, took one look at the so-called elite ninja that were tasked to escort him and laughed. Are you serious? This is the team of professional ninja that are going to protect me? They're just little kids, they probably couldn't protect their own lunch money. He started to laugh so hard he had to bend over and hold his stomach. He tried to straighten back up but realized he couldn't. He struggled to unbend his back, but his attention was drawn to his shadow. It was pitch black even though it was fairly bright in the room. His eyes tracked it and he saw it led back to one of the brats. The brat stood straight and he was forced to copy him even as he struggled to regain control on his own body. What are you doing to me? The brat pulled out a blade and held it out in front of him and he was forced to mirror him. The kid took a step towards him and he copied. Step after step he got closer and closer to being impaled. Alright I get it, stop please. Once he said that he fell to the floor like a puppet getting his strings cut. On the ground he could finally move himself again. We might be kids, but we are ninja, we can take care of anything that comes up, however troublesome it is. Shikamaru was annoyed, he had just used a chunk of chakra to shut the drunk up, hopefully for the whole trip if he was lucky. What Shikamaru means to say is that even as kids they are trained to kill. Don't underestimate them. Alright team, grab anything else you need for a multi-week mission and meet at the front gate in 1 hour. Dismissed. The 3 genin left the building before Ino and Naruto could hurry home for their last-minute things. They definitely didn't forget Shikamaru stopped them. Grab all the paper bombs you have, both of you. I don't trust the old man and I have an idea on how to use them if we need to. They thought it was an odd request, but agreed nevertheless. He was the smartest on the team, they could barely understand shogi, let alone beat Asuma sensei at it. Plus his plan was why they were able to pass Asuma's first test, so whatever plan he had was usually pretty good. Ino ran home to tell her parents that she was finally going on a C-rank mission and that she would be gone for a few weeks. Her father made sure she was properly packed for such a mission, sneaking in a few more rations into her bag as her mother tried to squeeze her to death. She never liked camping, so she made sure to grab her pillow as she escaped her mother's grasp. Her backpack was stuffed to the brim and was heavy as hell, but thankfully it would be a walking pace. She started to make her way to the front gate of Konoha for her first real mission. Shikamaru headed home at a leisurely pace. It was going to be a long day, no need to waste energy. He lazily packed his bag with as little as he could until his mom checked it before he left. After a quick scolding he was forced to repack, rubbing his ear all the while. From his mother he received a kiss goodbye and a warning he should do his best. His father gave him a good luck like usual. A few weeks without hearing damage sounded really good even if he was working the whole time. Hopefully it would be a boring mission, but Lady Luck never blessed him, so he readied himself as he made his way to the gate. Naruto rushed to his new home and entered the weapons room. He grabbed a pack of kunai and shuriken and stuffed them carefully in his bag. He really wanted to bring one of the swords that were on display, but he would more likely cut himself than the enemy. He checked his supplies and grabbed a few of his extra seed packets for some on-the-go training. This was his chance. This was his chance to prove what he was made of. Combat was more than likely on this mission, and he was ready to prove to himself he could add this. He steeled himself as he made his way towards the gates of Konoha. Scene break. Team 10 made their way down the road in a loose diamond formation. Naruto was in the front, Ino and Shikamaru were on the sides, while Asuma watched them from the back. Tazuna was settled in the middle where he was the most protected. It was a clear blue sky and a hot and humid day. Ino was focused on the newest training her father had given her. She was focused on trying to sense chakra in her surroundings. Her family was extremely sensitive to chakra, and sensing was a family mainstay. She herself was fairly sensitive to chakra already, so this training came naturally to her. She could easily pick out Naruto from wherever he was because somehow he had a crapload of chakra, while she struggled to sense Shikamaru when comparing the two. So far she hadn't sensed anything other than her team, so that was hopefully a good sign. Naruto was dead bored. He wasn't allowed to talk as Ino needed to concentrate on her sensing and talking would distract her. She made it perfectly clear what he was to quote, "Shut the hell up, Naruto." So far all they had done was walk, they couldn't even pick up the pace because the bridge builder couldn't keep up. If he was stronger he would just carry the old fart at this point because this sucked. They made their way through a valley until Asuma stopped them. "Ino, do you feel that?" Ino, having her concentration broken, shut her eyes again and focused. She could barely sense it, but on either side of them it felt like chakra was building on both their sides. "I feel 2 chakra signatures on our sides, but I can't tell what they are doing." The team got their weapons ready and got into a more ready stance. Each genin that their thoughts running through their heads. This was their first real combat situation, and sweat began to build as the tension rose. Ino was shaking, she was scared. She wasn't the best fighter and she knew it and was nervous. Shikamaru was in a similar situation, possibilities and plans ran through his head at a frightening pace as he thought of the possibilities. Water slowly began trickling down the sides of the hills from the woods on their sides. A gentle flow that gradually got worse and the water began to rise as it rushed past their ankles. Naruto's hands were slightly shaking as he held a kunai in his grip. The thought of 2 Asumas attacking him was putting him in a bad state. Laughter sounded through the forest as more water rushed downhill. It was like a waterfall bearing down on the genin. The sound abruptly stopped and all that could be heard was the gently flow of water on the ground. As the tension rose, 2 figures wearing dark cloaks and gauntlets with long claws rushed from the forest and tore into Asuma. A ninja seemed to skate on top of the water as they tore through their sensei. The 3 genin closed in on their client as the ninjas circled them like sharks in the water. "Now for the kiddies," one of them said and tossed a spike chain to the other, connecting it to their gauntlets. As the ninja rushed the group, something in the genin clicked, the switch was flicked. Naruto and Ino threw paper bomb wrapped kunai at the pair as Shikamaru got ready. The bombs exploded in a rain of water that showed them all. The mist cleared to show no remains or ninja anywhere in sight. Naruto turned his head looking for some sign of the ninja that attacked them. Ino focused trying to sense them and her eyes went wide at the realization. "Shikamaru below us." Too late. The figures shouted as they exploded from he water below the group in front of Tazuna, intending to wrap him in the chain and tear him apart. They managed to get within inches of the target before they were stopped in their tracks. What the hell? They couldn't move their bodies. Shadow possession complete. The pair looked down and saw their shadows were black as night and realized they had gotten caught in their opponent's jutsu. The chain connecting the brothers that was their best weapon ended up capturing the pair by connecting their shadows on such a sunny day. Asuma jumped from his perch, proud his team passed the first real test, staring death in the face and not blinking. Good job, Shikamaru. Naruto, Ino, wrap them up and contain them. Naruto looked at Shikamaru, who was still holding his jutsu, and felt weak. He hadn't done anything. Ino had been able to detect them and Shikamaru had been able to catch them, but what did he do? Throw a single paper bomb? If it wasn't for his teammates, Tazuna would have died and he wouldn't have been able to stop it. He was supposed to be better than that, he had the Mokuton, damn it, so why didn't he do more? Was he behind the others? Was he weighing them down? He was looking down until a hand fell on his shoulder. He looked back and Asuma was standing behind him. You reacted, Naruto, that's more than enough for now. This won't be the last fight this mission, so prepare yourself. He said, almost reading his mind. The two brothers had never failed in assassination before and these kids barely broke a sweat. How did you get us both? He still couldn't believe they both got caught. Ino wrapped them tightly in ninja wire to a nearby tree trunk. You two were dumb enough to connect yourselves with that chain. All I needed to do was hit the chain you were using to connect both your shadows. Asuma wrapped him on the back of the head, can't let him get too cocky. Azuna, I think it's time for you to explain yourself. It's either then or we leave you to fend for yourself. You didn't pay us to fight trained ninja. His team had done well this time, but the demon brothers were in the bingo book and were high tuning at best, no telling what else they might have to face. Azuna knew he was in the wrong, in other ninja villages lying on a mission like that would see him killed. I can't pay for a higher ranked mission above C. My country has been gutted by Gato, we can barely feed ourselves. He has taken control over all imports to the country and is charging absurd prices. Our only hope is for me to complete the bridge. But the bridge up we no longer will have to be bound by his reign. He prayed that they would still help him, this was his last resort. Asuma sighed, he didn't like leaving people in pain like that whole country was, but he had a duty to protect his genin first over a C-rank mission. He would struggle to protect the client and his team if higher ranked ninja got involved, and with how rich Gato sounded, it was only a matter of time until that happened. Naruto, Ino, Shikamaru, it's your choice. Do you want to continue the mission? Keep in mind it's only going to get more dangerous. Naruto spoke before his teammates, could you better believe we are, we can't just leave now that we know what they are going through. Don't worry Mr. Bridge Builder, we will protect you until you finish your bridge. Shikamaru facepalmed and Ino crossed her arms. That was pretty much their answer as well, but Naruto as usual just blurted it out. Asuma choked out the two brothers. Naruto, make a few clones. Naruto formed 5 clones and waited for his orders. 2 of you report to the Hokage the situation, this mission just got upgraded to at least a B rank. These 2 are in the bingo book, request reinforcements. Don't go the same route and split up, now go. The 2 clones dashed off towards the hidden leaf. You 3 watch them until someone comes to collect them, kill them if needed, but try and leave on for a bicky. Now let's get moving. Chapter 9. The Ninja in the Mist. After the demon brothers it seemed that the excitement had passed. The last few hours were just walking down the road keeping their heads on a swivel. After what seemed like forever, Asuma sensei finally stopped them and decided it was time to set up camp. That's enough for today, let's set up camp here for the night. Tazuna, I thinks it's time you and I had a man-to-man talk. Tazuna nodded and began to feel sweaty. At least they were still going to help him, but getting interrogated wasn't something he was looking forward to. They set off the beaten path with Asuma while Naruto and his teammates worked on setting up camp. For the last time, Naruto, I don't care if you can make a mansion. I wouldn't sleep in anything you made. I doubt you could make anything worthwhile anyway. For once I agree with her. I would rather sleep under the stars anyway. Naruto bristled and laughed them off. Well, I will be sleeping in luxury while you two face the elements. Stand back and watch, wood style. 4-pillar house jutsu. Naruto slammed his hands down, hoping this would come out better than last time. To his horror, the result was much the same as last time, in fact it looked even worse. Feeling his cheeks redden as his teammates laughed at his creation. Like before, it was a pose structure not fit for a dog, let alone a person. He sagged his shoulders and went back to setting up the sleeping bags and fire. One day he would be able to make something decent and then he wouldn't let his team in. Give them a taste of their own medicine, that would show them. Naruto, could you make some wood for the fire? Pretty please. Ino batted her eyelashes. Haha, not a chance, you got the short straw, so find your own wood for the fire. How about I just tear down your house, she said using liberal air quotes. Unless of course, you still plan to sleep in it. Hardy har har, go ahead if you feel like it. He didn't even know if the wood he made could even burn. He hadn't gotten the chance to mess around with it yet. It made sense, but it was made using chakra and stuff made using chakra was weird and dangerous sometimes. Ino happily came back with a large load of firewood while he grumbled. It may be from how the chakra was infused, but it burned well. Asuma came back with a shaking Tazuna, it seemed the talk had gone well. Alright team, listen up. From what Tazuna here forgot to tell us, we can expect more fights in the future. Starting now we sleep in shifts. You will take the first shift tonight. Get some sleep, we start at first light. Scene break. The last few days were more of the same, but for Asuma that was good and bad. He could feel a fight coming and had his head on a swivel. Walking with a civilian at this pace was putting them at more risk, but he couldn't change that. Luckily, they were getting close, at most another day, and they would reach their destination, and he could stop worrying about ambushes all day every day. His happiness about getting close was shared with all the members of the group. Ino felt as if her feet were going to fall off and were covered in blisters. She was going to need to invest in some better shoes, because this was miserable. Shikamaru was trying not to fall asleep walking because somehow he had managed to do that a few days ago. Finally, they reached the shore of a massive body of water that stopped their progress. The view would have been amazing for the genin, who had never seen such a sight, if it wasn't for the thick layer of pea soup fog blocking almost all vision. This is it, from here on out we need to take a boat. I don't assume you can make one for us, Naruto. Naruto shook his head. Damn, he'll find us a boat, watched Tazuna. Tazuna knew he'd drunk a bit, but he never heard anything like making a boat with chakra before. What does he mean by you making a boat, kid? Naruto went to respond but was cut off by Shikamaru. It's something he's learning, why do you ask, old man? Well, there have been rumors spreading around that the Leaf has another Senju in its ranks. You wouldn't happen to be him, would you? If he is, it means I got my money's worth if you are. He said, chuckling. That do you mean your money's worth? You can't afford to pay us. Naruto shot back. Heads up. Shikamaru said, looking towards the fog-covered body of water. Asuma was slowly moving towards them in what looked like a boat made by Naruto. As he got to shore, he informed his team. Alright everybody, this man has agreed to take us into the land of the waves. For a more than generous bribe he is willing to make the trip, so climb in. The genin looked at the wooden boat and had some doubts. It didn't look like it would make the journey, and it had a suspicious looking spot that looked a lot like a hole. The boat had standing water in it, for God's sake. Under the glare of their sensei they slowly but surely stepped in and winced as the water level rose with every passenger. Azuna was a little more vocal about his distaste for the Pak, and only after reminding him that there was no other option did he finally climb in. And so, the group slowly drifted into the land of the waves. Scene break. When they finally reached the shore, the man who had brought them quickly pushed them out and pushed off, heading back where they came from. Asuma knew they could expect backup tomorrow at the earliest, so he needed to get the group somewhere relatively safe until another jonin could back him up. Tazuna, lead on. We need to get inside until the secondary team arrives and I can't see shit. The fog had only gotten worse and it was hard to see where they were. The group quickly followed behind the old man as he led them down a path only to be stopped as Naruto launched a kunai at a bush, putting the rest of the team on guard. Ino smacked him in the back of the head. What the hell was that, Naruto? Warn us next time. Naruto rubbed his head that was sure to bruise. Sorry, I thought I heard something. And he went over to bush to retrieve his kunai. Well, I appreciate being on guard. Don't just throw kunai at the slightest sound you hear. It could be a civilian next time. Naruto grabbed his kunai and snagged the thing he heard and held it up. Told you I heard something, I think you owe me an apology, Ino. Naruto held up a Snow-Well rabbit looking smug. Not a chance, you didn't even hit the poor thing, thank goodness. Ino said as she took it from him and snuggled it in her arms. Sensei, I don't think it's supposed to look like that. Shikamaru voices his concern while pulling out his own kunai. A winter coat on a rabbit in summer wasn't right. Asuma already had his knuckle weapon in his hands the second Naruto threw the kunai. It seemed the ambush he was worried about was starting already. Before he could snap 2/3 of his team out of their bickering, he heard a faint whistling. Get down. He dropped low, grabbing the client as his team dropped to the ground, thankfully getting into the right headspace in time. As they dropped a large cleaver sword right where their heads were and cut deep into a tree near cutting through it. As Asuma jumped back up, a figure showed himself standing on a butcher's cleaver nearly as long as him. Is this what they sent to save this place? An old man and 3 kids. What a joke. The only one of you worth any sport is Celebratory, son of the 3rd Hokage. Your head would look quite nice on my wall. The figure put himself in an odd pose and activated his chakra. The already dense fog that had blanketed the area somehow got even worse, limiting visibility more. Form up. Team 10's genin formed up on Tazuna on his sides. Don't interfere unless necessary, that guy's a Jonin level ninja of the mist, Zabuza wielder of the Kubikurum. Asuma knew he was at a heavy disadvantage, without sight he couldn't use flying swallow very well, and his other jutsu could hit his genin if he wasn't careful. The slight whistle was all the warning he got before the immense blade sliced through the mist and slammed into his blades. He skidded back from the force as Zabuza faded back into the mist. You need to pay attention to where you are, Celebratory. Zabuza shouted. Asuma realized how far away he was pushed from his team and they were in danger. The genin of Team 10 were struggling, Shikamaru and Ino had fallen to their knees from the bloodlust hanging in the air. It was suffocating for them, and Naruto was standing but on shaking knees, his head looking everywhere for some sign of his sensei, but the fog was so dense he could barely see anything. Hearing Zabuza's shout, he turned and saw the man standing in the middle of the group with his blade raised in the air. The blade rushed down, and Naruto pulled his kunai to try and stop it. As the blade came down, one of Asuma's knuckle blades pierced through the ninja, and he crumpled to the ground. The relief was short-lived as the body dissolved into water, indicating it was only a clone. Not bad, Celebratory, but now you lost your weapon. Zabuza appeared before Asuma, who was now down a weapon, only sporting a single blade against the massive one. The fight between the two started in earnest as they traded blows. The genin could barely see through the mist, and what they could see was too fast to make out. That was until their sensei was thrown into the nearby lake out of the mist with a large gash across his chest. Asuma fell into the cold water, not being able to get his feet under himself in time, and quickly went to pull himself out. He breached the surface only to be met with Zabuza looking down at him. Before he could get away, the water around him swirled into a vortex and he couldn't move or breath. He was caught in a prison jutsu and rushed to infuse chakra into his lungs to hold out. It was up to his genin now to break Zabuza's hold before time ran out. Got you now, Celebratory. Unfortunately, this means I can't kill your brats myself, but making you watch will be just as sweet. The clone of Zabuza rose from the water. A clone should be more than enough. Naruto felt like he was having a panic attack. His heart was pounding in his chest and he could feel his body shaking. How could they stop him if their sensei couldn't? Looking at the clone advancing, he tried to do anything but couldn't think of anything. A hand grabbed his arm. Naruto, make me some clones and buy me time. We have to interrupt whatever jutsu has Asuma. If we can do that, Asuma is back in the fight. Shikamaru was abnormally resolved. Naruto calmed himself and concentrated. He grew 15 clones out his body to make some time for whatever Shikamaru had planned. Zabuza grew a feral grin when he saw Naruto perform his jutsu. No one alive could claim to have beaten a Mokuton user, and now that title was being served to him on a plate. His clone advanced on the kids only to be intercepted by the brat that seconds ago was trembling. The kid sent 5 clones after his, but it didn't matter how many came, they were decades too young to scratch him. All 5 were cut clean through like paper, turning into chunks of wood vaguely resembling the kid. Then more surged forward and sprinted past his clone heading to him, but they were too slow. One by one they were picked off, leaving the last 2 to be dealt with by himself. He looked at the group and realized the clone brat wasn't there. A faint sizzle could be heard and his head snapped to the pile of remains that the 2 clones that made it to him left behind. He could see an edge of a paper bomb sticking out from the mess. They were probably attached to every clone the brat had made. He quickly put up his sword to cover his body from the impending explosion, just in time as the chain reaction of explosions rang out. The water surrounding Asuma shuddered but held firm. Asuma screamed out from inside the bubble. Leave me, save yourselves, you can't beat him. If he was going to die, he wouldn't get his team killed with him. As the sound left his mouth, the water prison collapsed and he was dumped onto the lake, this time managing to get his feet under him to stay on the surface. He looked at Zabuza and saw his body was rigid and shaking slightly. Looking at his team, he saw Ino burst into smoke to show Naruto instead. He looked at the tree line and saw the real Ino slumped over, meaning she managed to hit Zabuza with her mind transfer as the explosions went off. He quickly got up and put some distance between him and Zabuza as the man began to shake more violently, a sign that Ino was losing her grip over the man. Ino, release your jutsu on my mark. He took a large breath and expelled chakra from his lungs, creating a thick black cloud over the lake covering Zabuza. Now Ino. He made a quick glance and saw Ino's body lurch, and she sat up, signaling the possession had ended, and bit down hard. Years ago, he replaced 2 lost teeth with a flint replacement to enhance his favorite jutsu. His bite created a spark that connected with the thick cloud, and the spark lit the cloud and traveled down its path, sparking a massive explosion. The gunpowder was taxing on his chakra, but had some serious power behind it. The cloud of smoke cleared to reveal a still standing Zabuza. His sword had seemed to block some of the blow, but large parts of his body and clothes were charred black from the explosions. Zabuza was breathing heavily. He didn't expect Genin to get the upper hand on him like that. He had used the majority of his chakra capturing Celebratory, and it didn't pay off. His sword managed to block most of the blow, but was chipped and cracked from the force. He quickly made his way onto land to preserve his chakra. He heaved his cleaver up and moved forward. Celebratory was in a similar state, and with his hands free the Genin would be a non-issue. Before he could advance, the world went black and he fell forward unconscious. Asuma saw him fall from what looked like a senbon like Genma always had in his mouth. A hunter nin appeared from the trees and stood in front of the body of Zabuza. I'm sorry you had to deal with him, but you have my thanks. I've been hunting him for weeks now. The small hunter nin expressed his thanks. Is he dead? Naruto couldn't contain himself and received a nod in reply. Relief washed over him. Well, it was a shaky start. He was proud that he could face down such a threat. Asuma didn't trust whoever this was, but he didn't have a choice. He was almost out of chakra and his injury wasn't making it easier. He didn't want to jump into another fight, and while he was leaving without finishing the kill himself, his hand was forced. The hunter nin picked up the body and vanished from sight. Asuma gave his order to get to Tezuna's house and that Shikamaru was in charge and proceeded to pass out. Ino and Naruto were happy to be alive but still grumbled about not being put in charge. Ino focused her time on sensing anyone else that could attack while Naruto was stuck with the job of carrying their sensei. Thankfully nothing else happened on the trip to his house and Naruto not so gingerly dropped Asuma onto the bed and fell to the floor himself exhausted. "Sensei, you need to lay off whatever you've been eating. Why was I the one who had to carry him again?" Shikamaru didn't feel like dealing with his hyper teammate right now, he needed to take a nap for God's sake, because you're the strongest here, that's why. Naruto smiled and instinctively flexed his muscles while grabbing his bicep. Though not the brightest. Naruto stopped and frowned while Shikamaru just said clones. Naruto's eyes bulged and he smacked himself in the face. Stupid. And walked out the room and Shikamaru was finally able to sleep. Scene break. Asuma was still groggy from passing out and still in pain, but no rest for the wicked. Backup should arrive today and while his students did above and beyond, they had gotten a taste of what it meant to be a ninja. They needed to improve and fast. When the next fight came they wouldn't be able to rely on an immobile opponent, so he was about to put them through the paces. Let's see how they deal with the tree exercise. Limping out into the kitchen his genin were enjoying breakfast. "Naruto, Shikamaru, Ino, finish up and meet me outside. We need to meet with the secondary team on the mission and get you three up to shape." Ino put her utensils down and went to follow her sensei, snorting in disgust as Naruto shoved as much as he could into his mouth. Why couldn't she have been on an all-girls team, she wondered. As the team followed their sensei, they came to see their fellow classmates waiting outside with a bored-looking ninja reading a book. Team 10, meet Team 7 with Kakashi Haddock as team leader. The so-called reinforcements looked at them and scoffed. "We're supposed to back at them? Ino Pig and the idiots should be our backup if that." Sakura smugly looked at them. Kakashi had tried to make them understand that since they were the reinforcement team, they were in fact ranked below them at the moment. That conversation quickly became a lost cause and he decided to give up on that subject. Kiba and Sasuke already had trouble taking orders from him and Sakura would rather do anything than take orders from her so-called rival and the two lowest scorers in the academy. Kakashi knew his team didn't like how his team was progressing, so he was hoping comparing themselves to Asuma's team would give them a little boost. Asuma was confident his team was better and maybe he could humble his own team. This was going to be a fun day. "I don't expect you all to work together well right now. It's obvious you all have some issues with one another, so today is going to be a training day. You all need a boost if you are going to survive. Follow me." Asuma headed into the forest with both teams following behind. Kakashi left a shadow clone behind to watch over Tezuna as he headed out to see the fun. As the genin were following Asuma, Kiba had to ask. "So how did you losers manage to get a C-rank mission before us? Our mission is a B rank, Kiba, how do you like that?" Naruto smugly informed. "No way, I can believe a C rank because of your heritage, Naruto, but a B rank, pull my other leg right, Akamaru." Kiba laughed. Naruto grew a little angry, it wasn't just his heritage, he felt they had proved themselves and he didn't want to be known as relying on his name. "Believe it, 200 yen, we do better in training than you guys." "Guys? I'm a guy now, Naruto." Sakura was moving towards Naruto. Naruto paled Sakura, "Wait, I'm sorry. Listen up, you six. Today's training is tree climbing." Asuma stopped at a pair of large trees. He was met with a few different reactions. Naruto and Kiba laughed, Sasuke scoffed and looked away disappointed, and the girls were confused. "That it, sensei? I've been climbing trees since I was a baby." Naruto boasted with Kiba nodding along agreeing. Kakashi smiled. "I'm willing to bet you haven't done it like this, Naruto." He hadn't put his book away. "Today you're climbing trees without using your hands." Ino chimed in. "What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? You can't climb a tree without using your hands." "Oh really, why don't I show you?" Kakashi, still reading his book, walked right up the tree and seemed to defy the laws of physics, just walked up the tree. Seeing this, Sasuke suddenly became very interested in training. "How?" was all he asked. Kakashi jumped back down so he wouldn't have to yell or hand upside down for the whole talk. "As you all know, chakra is used to fuel your jutsu, but it can be used in so many ways. One of the ways you can use chakra differently is a technique that you can use to coat parts of your body with chakra. In this instance, you need to coat the soles of your feet with a layer of chakra. This will allow you to do several different things, but today it will allow you to stick to a surface. This is an important lesson for you all to learn for two main reasons. 1. Chakra control. This exercise will jumpstart you all on learning how to control the amount, flow, and location of moving chakra through your body. In the academy you are taught how to focus chakra in your hands to use hand seals and jutsu. But now you will need to move that flow to the soles of your feet while maintaining a steady and constant flow. And 2, it will make fights three-dimensional. It can be a large advantage to be able to use trees and the sides of buildings as a point of attack when you master this. Later training that uses this technique can even be used to walk on water. Now who's first? Sasuke was first to step up and attempted. He channeled chakra into his field and sprinted at the tree. Jumping and planting his field he pushed off attempting to go up, but instead he went sideways. He was thrown from the tree and crashed to the ground, sliding a few yards back in the process. He quickly got up hearing laughter and gasps. Naruto, Kiba and Shikamaru were all laughing at him. He was red in the face as Sakura and Ino tried to get his attention by asking if he was okay, but he didn't even bother to look at them. What did he do wrong? That was a good try Sasuke, but you put too much chakra into your feet. When you stepped you inadvertently pushed yourself off the tree instead of sticking to it. Kakashi turned to the laughing trio. Now that you've all seen how it should go and what can happen, your goal is to reach the top of the tree. Team 7 take one tree and Team 10 take the other. Asuma explained to the frustrated and embarrassed boy. Kakashi jumped in to add a little competition and hopefully effort. The first team whose members all reach the top first gets first dips on dinner. A little competition usually makes kids try harder. He was willing to bet the girls would compete and he already knew Kiba loved competition and Sasuke hated losing. You're all welcome to try different ways to climb the tree, but a running start helps, remember no using your hands. And with that Kiba immediately got started and rushed forward. Naruto was about to follow, but as he watched Kiba get the wind knocked out of him he hung back. A blonde blur rushed past him and dashed up the tree. Ino surprised herself with how far she managed to get up on her first try, making it almost halfway before she lost her footing. Marking her spot she plummeted down to earth but was caught by Naruto before she could slam into the ground. Looking up at his face both blushed and Naruto quickly released her to fall the last foot on her own. Shikamaru got down into an odd pose and focused on the tree, thinking. Naruto knowing how much it hurt to get the wind knocked out of you decided to be a bit more cautious. Kakashi explained how to do it and he had already done something similar with his hands. Kiba fell again and Naruto made up his mind. He looked at Shikamaru and got an idea, sensei said that they could use anyway to get up the tree. He put his hands in the snake seal the wood style was known for and yelled out multi-wood clone jutsu, 3 clones grew into existence. Catch us if we fall. And with that he put his foot on the tree and began walking up the tree. It was surprisingly easy, he thought. Though it felt like walking in glue he calmly walked all the way up the tree. When he got to the top, he couldn't contain himself and burst hells yay, I got it believe it believe it. He jumped throwing his hands up. It was then he realized he wasn't on the ground but sideways up a big ass tree and he just jumped off it. He fell face first and headed towards a grim fate of face planting the ground, but thankfully his clones were able to catch him before he hit the ground. Asuma had almost had to get up and hurt himself more to save his bonehead student, but thankfully he was beginning to use his clones better and smarter. Naruto, if you could not try to kill yourself today I'd appreciate it. Naruto rubbed his head. Sorry sensei. I got a little excited. Kiba walked up to him after seeing him just as easily as Kakashi sensei walk up the tree and demanded, how in the hell did you do that Naruto? Sasuke was of the same mind, he had just been shown up by the fucking laughingstock of the academy. He clenched his fists tightly almost drawing blood. Had he gotten so far ahead of him so fast? He was in Uchiha, it was his job to put the last Senju in his place and show that his bloodline was the real founder of Konoha. Naruto launched into a short and useless description of how he managed to do it, which involved lots of onomatopoeia for some reason that brought everyone's view of him right back down to where it was before. Sakura surprising her team and sensei especially managed to do just as well as Naruto and spent the rest of her time taunting Ino and watching Sasuke. Shikamaru, after a long time just watching, managed to do it as well, but was a little shaky on his feet. After getting back on solid ground laid down saying that he made it to the top and that was good enough. Kiba, Sasuke and Ino to a lesser extent struggled and the two boys were slowly making their way up the tree at a slow but steady pace. Ino progressed much faster, partly due to not having to worry about falling, and eventually made it to the top just before they ended for the day. Kiba and Sasuke were not so lucky, they still had another day at least to go before their training was done. Naruto spent the rest of his time working on his house jutsu, but after the day it still looked like a rotten out house. Kakashi led his mostly beaten up and bruised team back to the house, thoroughly amused at the day's proceedings and confident that while their egos were deflated, they could rise higher than before. Kiba the most because he had to fork over 2,000 yen. Scene break and so the days asked of training for one team and watching the bridge builder for the other. Asuma slowly managed to get back on his feet and into fighting shape, but as the bridge progressed the tension was building with it. They all knew Zabuza would be back and it was only a matter of time until he would attack again. Kakashi and Asuma pushed their teams in their training to prepare for the upcoming battle. He wouldn't come alone next time and with Gato's money, they could be facing more than one Rouge Nin. Naruto had worn himself out trying to make progress on the house-making jutsu, well he had a lot more chakra than normal his sensei said, making so much chakra-infused wood was draining, and he was pooped. He adopted Shikamaru's pose of lying flat on his back spread eagle trying to catch his breath. He knew someone was watching him, but it was probably Asuma checking in on him or Sasuke. Sasuke had been keeping an eye on him ever since he climbed the tree, and it was starting to get annoying. The person got closer, and Naruto opened his eyes to see someone leaning over his face right above him. He jumped up and stared at the girl staring back at him. She was wearing a long kimono and had a gathering basket in her arm. Hi there. He didn't really know what else to say other than that or inventive curse word for scaring the shit out of him. Hello, are you a ninja by any chance? She asked with a smile on her face. Yay, I'm a ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. My name's Naruto. Better to be polite. Why? Was all she asked. Naruto had to think, at first being a ninja was a means to becoming Hokage and making everyone who belittled him and ignored him pay attention and acknowledge their mistake. But now it was a bit more complicated. Being Hokage was still on the game plan, but if he was being honest, it wasn't his purpose anymore. He had a family, or at least a family member wherever she was. That was his goal, to get stronger so he could find her and bring her home. To find and protect my family. Do you have a big family? She asked, her goal was closely related to his. Not really, as far as I know I only have one relative alive and no one knows where she is. Naruto said a little disappointed. But I have a lot of special people. Iruka-sense, Gigi, and now I have my team. So you know what it's like to become stronger to protect the ones you love? The girl asked. I guess so, why are you out here if I can ask? And why were you watching me? I'm here to collect herbs for a person special to me. Haku made sure to keep herself in check, this was one of the ninja who Zabuza had attacked. And I've never seen anything like you were doing, I'm sorry if I was overly curious. More like scouting the enemy she thought. If Zabuza hadn't told her about the wood style he used she would have swallowed her tongue when she saw it. She was a part of the small minority who possessed bloodline limits, but his was the holy grail compared to hers. It's okay I was just wondering, do you need any help? If you don't mind that would be wonderful. Scene break. And so Naruto helped her pick some random herbs for a while until she had a full basket. Thank you Naruto, as pleasant as this was I hope we won't meet again. If we do, my name's Haku. And with that she left him wondering what he did wrong to make her not want to see him again. He walked back to Tezuna's house a little downtrodden after screwing that up so bad. Haku made her way back to their hideout to tend to Zabuza. He was still confined to his bed as it hurt too much for him to move, but the herbs she managed to gather would speed up his recovery, hopefully. Zabuza noticed her enter. Where have you been Haku? I gathered herbs that should help with your burns. She replied as she began to put a paste on his burns. I saw one of the ninja you met today. She said casually, the one that can use wood style. Did you kill him? No, he helped me gather your medicine. Zabuza sighed and relaxed as his pain lessened. You're too kind Haku, one day that weakness will kill you. Haku just nodded and continued tending to his wounds. She jerked when the door behind her flew open, revealing long shadow of a very short man. She grabbed her mask and put it on before he entered. He walked in confidently tapping his cane as he went. Is this what I get for hiring the demon of the mist? Lying in bed while they get closer and closer to completing the damn bridge. I have half a mind to kill you now and take the bounty on your head for all the trouble you've caused me. He took a step towards the crippled ninja and cried out in pain. The brat he kept with him had a death grip on his arm and he could hear the bones snap. Gato fell to his knees clutching his arm. Shut up you fool. You'll get your money's worth. The bridge won't be completed, next time think twice about threatening me or Haku here won't be so kind. He ended with a laugh at the kneeling Gato still holding his arm in pain. You'd better you damn ninja, I've invested too much into this to lose now. End them or else. And he not so confidently hobbled away with his guards. Haku, the next time you see that brat don't hold back. I have no use for you if you can't kill some kid. Haku nodded looking down knowing the next time she saw him she would have to kill her friend. In 4 days, I should be healed enough, prepare. What if Naruto has sharingan and Senju bloodline? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.